Okay, other things I want to let you know before we keep moving forward is if you have anything you would like to put in the chat box, please make sure that you change the two area in the chat box to all panelists and attendees or everyone, so that everyone can see your question or comment. The webinar is also being recorded, and I'm putting the link to the webinar recordings into the chat. I'll put that there. The other thing is, if you for any documents or anything that are referenced in this webinar can be found at the link aphconnectcenter.org/webinars. I've also put that in the chat. If you are looking for more events like this one, please visit the Connect calendar at aphconnectcenter.org/events and check out what's coming up. And that way there you can also add your own event to the community calendar. That calendar was created and intended to be used by everyone in the field to please share information about events that are happening in your area. So please make sure you take advantage of that. Also, if you want to see a listing of any of our upcoming webinars, you can go to the aphconnectcenter.org website with the /webinars, and you will get a listing of all of the webinars that we have coming up. And then finally, for the last bit of information about the Connect Center, I'd like to let you know about, we have an information and referral line. The phone number is 1-800-232-5463. It is staffed from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please know that we are here to answer any questions you have and provide some direction on where you can find some services and resources. And I also put that in the chat, as well as the email, our email address where you can email us directly at ConnectCenter, one word, at aph.org. And someone from our information and referral line will see your email and then respond back to you with either an answer or a request to actually speak with you, or anybody who is calling on the phone. I'm sorry, anybody who's emailing on the phone. Okay, and so I'm going to move forward with a quick overview of the Connect Center. The APH Connect Center is made up of a few websites. We've got Family Connect, Vision Aware, and Career Connect, and which in just a minute, when we hand this over to Richard Rueda, he is our content manager for Career Connect and the one who helped put all this together. So kudos to Richard. Thank you so much. We're so happy to have him working with us. Within our website on Family Connect, you can find information about transition at different ages. Transition doesn't start only at 14. Transition actually starts from, when our kiddos are born. We have some exciting partnerships coming up that will start to address transition from 4 years old to 24 years old with the NRTC. And so we're really excited about that. And so Family Connect also has information about transition, and also for information for parents about, how to raise a child who is blind. What are some activities you can do? And then information about eye conditions. Vision Aware has a lot of information on eye conditions. Its focus is mainly for adults and older adults who may be either blind or going blind. And there we have people who visit Vision Aware can have access to the Getting Started guide for people who are new to vision loss. And that's something that you can download as a PDF, or you can call or email us for a hard copy. It is available in large print. So please make sure pass the word around about that, or take advantage of that yourselves. And then of course, finally, Career Connect. And so Career Connect right now is all things transition. Transition and activities and things for rehab therapists, for TVIs who are working with students who are in that transition age. But again, we're really trying to highlight the fact that transition starts a lot earlier than 14. So we're really going to be expanding that. And so with that really brief, quick overview, how'd I do, Richard?
You're good. We're awesome, Olaya.
Richard's he's my timekeeper because I can go on and on and on. I will now hand it over to Ty Tomasi, who is our Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Did I say that right, Ty?
So we have a new change to it. I'll just go ahead and jump right in here.
Go ahead. Okay.
So my name is Ty Tomasi. I'm the director of Aapd here at APH, and Aapd stands for Accessibility, Belonging, Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity. So that's the new name of this department. And so this is a recent addition to APH. We have been working a lot on accessibility. We talk about the fact that you can't have all these other things without universal access to everything. So that's been the underpinning of everything that we're doing. I've been here since January. And so we have quite a few initiatives that we're undertaking with the Aapd department. Many of them are external, working with external agencies, providing all kinds of information to people who contact APH for direction and guidance in these areas. We're also doing a lot of internal stuff with setting up some resource groups to talk about intersectional identities. We're working on a procurement policy to make sure that all things that we get involved with or that we contract with or all software is as accessible as possible. And as we're finding, sometimes those things don't exist in the marketplace. So we are hoping to work to be an innovator and leader in helping other companies to become more accessible with the software that they're releasing. We're also working on employment surveys internally to see what else we can do. We're providing internal trainings, very similar to the external trainings, but just in different areas that employees need. We're working on bringing the Racial Equity Institute training to APH to talk about anti-racism and kind of how to attack implicit bias, which all of us carry and we have to continually work on. We're also building local partnerships in our outreach efforts with the local botanical center, the transit agency, the mayor's office, and things like that, because we want to make the city as accessible as possible. And I'm currently working on a grant partnership with CDW to offer a course on coding for blind coders, for blind adults. And then we're doing lots of different trainings like I talked about. And we're also going to different conferences to help with these Aapd efforts as well. And we have been working a little bit with the local School for the Blind for their employment program. And that's where we've done a little bit of mentoring as well. So I've enjoyed the opportunity to mentor some of those students thus far. So I think that's a quick overview of what we're working on, but there's a lot more in the pipeline.
And thank you, Ty. This is Richard Rueda, and good morning, everyone. I am the digital content manager with Career Connect. It's really great to see Ty. I do want to acknowledge another colleague who is new to APH like myself. And if you want to say a few words, we'll welcome Katie Frederick, who's our new digital content manager for Vision Aware.
Welcome.
Yes, good morning. It is great to be here with all of you this morning. And I started a new role at APH here a couple weeks ago. And I am the digital content manager for the Vision Aware site that Olaya spoke about earlier. So really looking forward to diving in and spreading the word for adults who are impacted by blindness or vision loss. So looking forward to today's discussion and really excited to be here at APH.
And thank you, Katie. And there will be some crossover initiatives between Vision Aware, Family Connect, and Career Connect we will be working on. And like Ty, Katie, and I, we're all new and we're excited and to do some brilliant connections with APH ConnectCenter and APH in general. So welcome, everyone. Thank you. I will be brief and then I will hand it off to you, Steve. I just want to give everyone an overview of today's topic and what we've done on this. We started this last month during at the start of our annual meeting on October 5th, and we did a 2-day mentoring discussion on policy and had mentors and mentees talk to everyone about the importance of mentoring and in the workplace, formal, informal, and it was such a great conversation. We had to move some things around, so we decided to continue it with the Inclusive Mentoring Employment Policy Summit, which is today, and we thank our experts, our subject matter experts, all of those of you who are attending, and we've got 2 excellent panels for you this morning and afternoon. trying to be mindful of afternoon, as some of those of you are on the East Coast, and we'll go until about 1:30. So our first panel will go till about 11:45, or shortly after. We'll take a few 15-minute break and resume at 12 noon and continue on there. Please do put your questions or ideas in the chat box. We want this to be a dialogue for all of you attending. And again, if you got questions, put them in the chat. And this session, like the ones we did in October, have and are being recorded, so you can go back to the APH ConnectCenter webinar site and view those. It's great viewing. It's great to see a lot of folks from all over. I am really, we are really thankful to our friends, Derek Shields, who will be our moderator for panel 1, with some really great policy experts, and Stephen Allen with Policy Works, Peer Mentoring, and Cayenne Flint. They were with us from the start. We started planning these sessions back in June, and it's really exciting. They really, they know this, they know it well, they live it, they breathe it, and I can't say enough. So thank you, Steve. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Cayenne. I will hand it over to Stephen Allen. Stephen, if you want to talk to us a few minutes about what you're doing in this space, and then we'll hand it off to Derek. Good morning.
Okay. Thank you, Richard. First of all, I want to express my appreciation and gladness to be here today among my peers and mentors in this space. I hope to learn a lot from today's conversation, and so I'm glad to be here. My name is Stephen Allen. I'm the president of Policy Works, and in that work, we operate the Peer Mentoring Works, which is a community of practice around peer mentoring, and really in the vocational rehab space. We got there through 5 years worth of work through the Workforce Innovation and Technical Assistance Center, which supported pilot projects through vocational rehab agencies to implement a peer mentoring program. And in that work, we developed a training and certification platform, and have continued to develop tools to help support the direct delivery of peer mentoring. I really have enjoyed working with Richard and the team over the last 6 months, fielding and learning more from our community about other peer mentoring programs. I know that in the experience in the laboratory that I got to participate in with the WinTAC, we learned that there are some things that will ensure effective practice in the field of peer mentoring. And that really is around the structure or clarity of structure and programmatic objectives, good training and certification, being sure to tell the story through impact and research showing the value of peer mentoring. A lot of what we do today is centered around self-advocacy. And self-advocacy is a challenging thing to impart to the community. You really can't do it as well from standing in front of them and defining what a self-advocate is. You show them. That's the way we learn. People who, individuals in the past who have been successful at career path employment indicate overwhelmingly that they were impacted through mentors, peer mentors, as they move through their career. So the question is, how can we use that? And at the center of the WinTAC and the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, peer mentoring stands in the pre-employment transition service space as a means to support the delivery of self-advocacy and the other 4 required activities. We believe that this work is just blossoming, and we hope to learn from our peers in other communities in terms of mentoring programs. And it's with, I'm going to introduce Derek. Derek has been an integral part of Policy Works from its beginning a decade ago, and went on to lead the National Disability Mentoring Coalition. And he's worked with us in peer mentoring works to help develop some of these tools. And it's my honor to introduce my friend and colleague and peer and one of my greatest mentors, Derek Shields.
Hey, Steve, thanks a lot. That's quite the rollout. I appreciate the introduction, but more importantly, the description you provided of all the work that you've been doing around peer mentoring models in the country. Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Derek Shields. I serve as the director of the National Disability Mentoring Coalition. If you're not familiar with what that is, I'll let you know. And it's my real honor to be with you again today for part 2 of this series, focusing on the importance of inclusive mentoring. In recognizing this, we're really here to explore the power of personal relationship and how that can impact the trajectory of employment. It can also impact it, of course, in a negative direction. And so before I introduce our panelists today, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on the mentoring gap that exists in our nation. The National Disability Mentoring Coalition resides at Partners for Youth with Disabilities. This is a nonprofit organization out of Boston. And NDMC, now about to enter our 8th year, is trying to build a platform to connect the fragments of disability and inclusive mentoring that exist across the country. Somehow we've combined our efforts now with 300 partners that are doing work in this space. And I certainly appreciate Olaya and Richard and Ty and the rest of the team at APH and Career Connect for partnering with us in PolicyWorks. Specifically, NDMC has been working with an entity called Mentor. If you're not familiar with Mentor, check them out at mentoring.org. Mentor is the nation's umbrella organization bringing mentoring initiatives from each community together to explore how we close the mentoring gap that exists. Let's think about this. What is the mentoring gap? 1 in 3 youth in America grow up without a mentor. 1 in 3 youth don't have a positive influence, a role model, or a mentor to help them think about their future and to create that future in their own vision. So with that, we know that 1 in 3 youth in America are growing up. That one likely is a youth with a disability. Not always, but likely. And we know that, these individuals through data are more likely to be absent from school. They're more likely not to form those career objectives, and they're more likely not to have those role models to help them envision career pathways. We also know that mentors do change these things, and there is fidelity in mentoring models and in peer mentoring models. And we want to explore those policies and investments. So this past July, NDMC partnered with Mentor and our other 300 colleagues around the country and actually had a congressional briefing on the matter. We brought together the Congressional Youth Mentoring Caucus and the Bipartisan Congressional Disabilities Caucus. For the first time in our nation's country, the Youth Mentoring Caucus and Disabilities Caucus worked together to speak about the investments needed for inclusive mentoring. We followed that up with our colleagues from Aapd and other organizations with a community briefing in September, focused on how do we take that message and ensure both disability and mentoring movements across the country are aware of this congressional focus. And then we end now with the second part of this 2-part series focused on employment policy and the connection of mentoring as in fact, an employment policy. To do that, of course, we brought together a panel of experts from federal, state, and nonprofit organizations that I have the privilege to talk to this morning, and we look forward for your questions as well. Let's now introduce our panelists. We have with us today Carol Doback, the Acting Commissioner from the Rehabilitation Services Administration at the U.S. Department of Education. Good morning, Carol.
Good morning, Derek, and good morning, everyone.
Thank you. We also are honored to have Jennifer Sheehy, the Deputy Assistant Secretary for the U.S. For the Office of Disability Employment Policy at the U.S. Department of Labor, and actually the 4th webinar I've been on with Jennifer in the past 2 weeks. I don't know how this happened, but I'm getting a lot of time with Jennifer. It's an honor. Good morning, Jennifer.
I can see you're getting really tired of it, Derek. So nice to be here. Thank you very, very much.
Not at all. We're also joined today by Daniel Fry, the administrator at the Services for the Blind and Visually Impaired for the New Hampshire Bureau of Vocational Rehabilitation. Good morning, Daniel.
Good morning. Good morning.
And we are pleased to also have Ty Tamasi with us from, now we know, I have the updated title, the Director of Accessibility, Belonging, Inclusion, Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity, or APH.
You got it.
Excellent.
Great to be here. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And we also welcome Jasmine Bailey, the Operations Manager and Program Coordinator for the American Association of People with Disabilities and a longtime partner of NDMC. Good morning, Jasmine.
Good morning, Derek. Good morning, everyone.
Awesome. So these are our panelists, and we're going to start out with a bit of an introductory question for everyone. And so we'll go back to Carol, and then as I introduced you, we'll have you kind of go up next. But first, if you could just kind of introduce yourself. Obviously, I've said your title and your role, but more of your organizational and personal experience with mentoring. Where do you have any intersections? And in fact, if you have a mentoring experience or mentor that's impacted you in your life, could you briefly share that with us today? So we'll start out with Carol, and then we'll move forward. Carol?
Sure. Thank you, Derek. I'm glad to share. When I saw this question and have thought about it, in terms of formal mentoring, I'm in the 21st year of my career with the Rehabilitation Services Administration and the federal government. And it was only in this last year of my career that I had a formal mentoring relationship of sorts. I took advantage of some executive coaching services that were available through my department. And I really valued that time that I had. I learned a great deal, even though I have been supervising and managing since 2006. Much of what I learned validated what I had been doing. So I was glad to have that opportunity, as well as learn a few new tricks of the trade. But when I look back over my life, I have had many different mentors for different aspects of my life, though I would not have called them formal mentoring relationships. I know it was mentioned earlier that transition and mentoring should begin early in a child's life, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. Except I did not meet a person with a disability or a person who was blind like myself until I was 29 years old. And that's where mentoring for me really began around my disability, who I could be as a person with a disability, what opportunities really were available for me, what skills I needed to learn in order to ensure I had those opportunities. And that developed again through meeting the first individual I did who was blind. She became a good friend of mine as well, but she introduced me to the National Federation of the Blind. And through that organization, I became acquainted with a wide variety of people, many of whom I consider my mentors, although it was never done so formally. When I began my career at RSA a number of years later, I again didn't have any formal mentoring relationships, but I certainly took every opportunity I could to learn from those around me. I viewed my supervisor as a mentor of mine, of course. As I was new to the work of RSA, vocational rehabilitation, and the advocacy programs that I was responsible for at the time, again, definitely learning, helping me to learn the substance of my work, as well as how to do the work, both of which are important. And I took advantage also of all my colleagues who were around me, many of whom had a great, were very willing to spend the time with me and help me learn and become a valuable member of the organization. I think we all have to be open to those ideas and take advantage of those opportunities when they present themselves, even if nobody is going to call themselves formally your mentor, or you view them in that way. I also think it's important, though, in the mentoring relationship that the individual who is seeking the mentoring is willing to do their part. As I was reaching out to either my supervisor or my colleagues, I took it upon myself to do whatever work I could do, do the research that I needed to do. And once I had that in hand, it's when I went to other people and followed up with what I really needed to learn and know and could what they could share with me in terms of their real practical experience in doing the job. So I've had mentors in many different ways, many different mentors at different points in my life. And I just encourage everybody to always be open to that experience in whatever way it presents itself to you, whether it's through formal relationships. So some of the types of programs we are hearing about today, and you've heard about through other sessions sponsored by APH, as well as many of those informal mentoring opportunities that we have to take advantage of in our lives.
Carol, thank you so much for getting us started here. We often hear this informal mentoring called authentic or natural mentoring. It's really part of a culture, but you also brought up how owning the mentoring responsibility is something that the mentee can do. But if we don't learn how to do that, then it doesn't come naturally. And a lot of people steer clear of that because they aren't comfortable. So appreciate you sharing that, and also sharing that, it took until you were 29 to really find role models and mentors that identified the same as you. It's very important. Excellent. So now let's shift to Jennifer. Jennifer, the same question. What about your mentoring experiences?
Okay, well, thank you again, Derek and APH, for having me here today. I love being on this panel with so many friends and partners in our work. And I have to also give a shout out to Terry Susan Hartman, who is a big mentor advocate and mentor herself. I also want to give a shout out to Ty, because you are a very good acronym creator, and from a federal employee who really prides herself on creating acronyms, my hat is off to you. Good job there with Abide.
Thanks. I won't take full credit. I got the idea from another acronym called BIDE. I just added the A.
That is good. I love it. So thank you. This is such an important topic today. And Derek, that statistic that you noted earlier, 1 in 3, that is outrageous. 1 in 3 young people doesn't have a mentor or an adult who can provide that kind of relationship and critical support in their lives. That's terrible, and we all need to work on that. And I love this, all the resources that I know our colleagues are going to talk about today. There's a comedian Mitch Hedberg, who said, "I'm sick of following my dreams. I just want them to tell me where they're going and I'll hook up with them later." I think that's funny, but it's also so telling, because it is really hard to steer your career path and follow your dreams. It's for young people with disabilities, it's important that they even have dreams. So many of them aren't given the opportunity, or because of low expectations, they don't have the same type of career dreams that people who don't have disabilities often are cultivate from a really, really early age. So not only do they have to have those dreams and those high expectations, but they need supports to get there. And that's what all of these programs you're going to hear about today are about. And all the partners and the leaders on the panels there are here to provide, because they young people with disabilities don't have to do this alone. There are so many great programs, federal services, state services, and nonprofit organizations that are here to help. And I hope we'll continue to keep in touch with this group so we can make sure that gap is filled. In my own life, I happen to have had a disability through an acquired, or I acquired my disability through an injury. It was a spinal cord injury when I was 32. And at the time, I didn't know anyone who used a wheelchair or who had the types of disabilities that all of a sudden I had, but I was connected to someone who became my mentor, Alan Reich, who was the president of the National Organization on Disability. He just very coincidentally had exactly the same type of injury at the same cervical level of my spinal cord injury, and had had it in the same way at the same age. He also had a similar educational background. So he had his MBA, and I was in the middle of my MBA program when I had my spinal cord injury. So he really, really took me under his wing and helped me navigate that tough period when you're figuring out how your disability might interact with the new job or your school or whatever it is that you were doing that you want to get back to when you acquire a disability. And he, sometimes there were fits and starts. It's not all success all the time. I had to figure out how to manage medication for my spinal cord injury also while trying to go to school and work. And sometimes that meant I needed to ask for an accommodation to take a break after my medication so I wouldn't fall asleep in meetings or something. But these are things that a mentor who is who provides a trusting relationship can help you navigate honestly. You don't want to necessarily ask your boss how to manage these things, especially if it's something that you want to request an accommodation for. And he later became my boss, but at the time it was so wonderful to have someone who had the same disability who could help me navigate that transition period for myself. And mentors can take the form, lots of different forms. Carol gave so many great examples of that. And in this case, it was an informal mentoring relationship, and that was wonderful. I've also had formal mentoring relationships when I became a senior executive in the federal government. You go through a formal mentoring program. And so I was connected to someone I didn't know at all. And in that case, the natural questions don't flow as easily. So having structured questions, milestones, achievements that you want to work with your mentor on is really helpful. And that's when a formal mentoring, a structured mentoring relationship can really be beneficial. So you get what you need as a mentee out of that relationship. And then because I have the benefit of age, I've been a mentor too. And I do think, the mentors, when they take on that role, it's such an important position that you need to take seriously if you're going to volunteer or get paid as a mentor. And it's important that you're constantly looking at the mentees' goals and what they want to accomplish and achieve through that relationship so that you can help in the way that's best for them. Thank you so much. I'll stop there.
Excellent, Jennifer. Thank you very much. I mean, you started off by ensuring that we're looking at lofting expectations and using the programs and supports that are available. I think one of our challenges is making sure that those that need them know how to get them and utilize them. And then you reflected in these three different models. First, remembering Alan, the founder of the National Organization on Disability and your mentor. That's awesome that we bring him in, because we're really upon the shoulders of many who helped us get here. And so that reflection is really helpful. And then your roles in mentoring programs, and specifically, I just want to call you out for those that you have mentored. You were inducted in 2015 to the inaugural class of the Susan Daniels Disability Mentoring Hall of Fame, which you're a class of 25 individuals that were inducted that year. And that's the impact that you've had on so many and that you continue to make. So thank you for all of that and support of mentoring as well. All right, with that, we're going to switch over and travel over to New Hampshire, and we're going to ask Daniel to jump in and talk about the intersections you've had with mentoring and any specific mentoring experiences. Daniel?
Well, good morning, and thank you for this opportunity. I feel privileged to say that I have enjoyed the opportunity of being mentored by many people, both formally and informally. I grew up as a blind child, but when I grew up, I was reared primarily by my grandparents, whose expectations for me were quite limited. And so I found, despite my desire to go to public school and their decision to send me to a school for the blind, I found that the one silver lining by going to the school for the blind was that I was exposed to people who had different beliefs, who rejected the standard expectation that blind people couldn't achieve their dreams. And so I was introduced to a new way of thinking. My principal, Dennis Thurman, who served as the principal at the South Carolina School for the Blind, sat me down and said, Dan, if there's something you want to achieve in life, there's no reason you can't do it. Your grandparents love you, but they simply don't understand that there's not a correlation between vision and capacity, or vision and ability. So Mr. Thurman encouraged me to go to college, and while in college and law school, I looked to professors and to other administrators to help me understand things that I needed to do. I also, like Carol, have been a member of the National Federation of the Blind for a very long time. And having grown up poor, I'm happy to sort of vulnerably acknowledge that, I didn't have the knowledge or skills about how to eat in a fancy restaurant, or how to dress appropriately, or do the things that people undertake who aspire to executive opportunities. And so I would be sitting by a person in the NFB. Her name happens to be Diane McGeorge. And I loved blue cheese dressing, but I was getting a Caesar salad, and I said, I have blue cheese dressing on that. And she leaned over to me quietly and discreetly and said, Dan, when we order a Caesar salad, it comes with Caesar dressing. There's no choice. And I said, thank you very much. I didn't realize that. And that, I think, was a really poignant example of someone undertaking genuine interest and care in you and helping you to look and learn to be appropriate in those environments. I have seen, once I became involved in administering state agencies for the blind, many programs that I have had the pleasure to create that have compelling mentoring opportunities in each of them. And these mentoring programs in the transition and pre-ETS areas that the law has now created really do create transformative opportunities for students to learn. Like was said earlier, I don't believe that mentoring starts or transition starts at 14. I believe it starts as early as you can find someone willing to tolerate you and show you the way. And I have tried to reciprocate by offering my experience and my background to others, recognizing that reciprocal sharing is the only way that we as people with blindness and vision impairment or broader disabilities will learn. And so I could outline a number of examples of my mentoring experience. I could detail for you the elements of the programs that I've had the pleasure to create when I've served as director of both the New Jersey Commission for the Blind and Services for the Blind and Vision Impaired in New Hampshire. But I won't go into that level of detail. I'll simply say that I have seen mentoring perform magic. I have seen mentoring transform people's lives and infuse them with the confidence and skills that will allow them to grow and flourish.
Sorry, I was on mute. Dan, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on mentoring, reflecting on the impact that Dennis and Diane had on your life, and noting out the idea of early intervention could raise expectations for others earlier, but also the idea that we can raise our own expectations through the influence of others and creating sounding board-like environments. You mentioned reciprocal mentoring as well. My friend and colleague Deb Daggett always talks about the importance of reciprocal mentoring, and that, we talk about the two-way influence that happens, and that could be so important. So thanks for bringing up all those points. Now we're going to move to Ty and ask Ty to share some of your reflections on mentors and or mentoring experiences. Ty?
Thank you so much. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a white presenting multiracial woman. And I say that because it ties into my story here. I want to acknowledge Dan as one of my mentors. So it's really a pleasure to be serving on a panel with Dan. He's been an informal mentor to me over the years, and I really always appreciate his advice. When I was a transition age youth, I had a lot of difficulty getting a job. As we know, that's a difficult thing for blind youth to do sometimes. And many of you have probably heard this story, so I apologize to those who have. I finally landed a job, and my job was to dress up in a crab costume outside of a seafood restaurant. Very untraditional teenage job. It was kind of fun, get to go out and dance in a crab costume, get people to come into the seafood restaurant. 2 days after being hired, though, someone came back from vacation, a manager, and they decided that it wasn't safe for a blind person to do that job. And so I really thought at this age that if I could not be a crab as a blind person, I didn't know really what I could do. And I lost hope. I truly lost hope, because I thought that's a pretty low expectation, that I can't even do this particular job that doesn't require a lot of skill. It just requires dancing around in a hot costume in a very safe place. But what saved me in that situation was there were two young women, Marina Eastham and Michelle Bruns, who invited me to go down to DC to go to an advocacy event. And I had never traveled on my own really at this point. And they said, you can do it, just get on the train, we'll meet you down there. They had no question of my ability to do that, to get on a train, go somewhere new, go to Capitol Hill, do some advocating. No question that I was able to do that. And that authentic mentoring opportunity that just happened to pop up, it was transformational. I didn't even believe in myself because of what had happened, because of the bad attitudes of society about blindness and negative attitudes with employers. But these women believed in me, and they were like my same age. They were like, come down here, we'll have a lot of fun. We went shopping, we did all kinds of traveling together while we were down there. And they truly believed in me more than I believed in myself. And that same trend of authentic mentoring continued. I went to train with a guide dog, and I met some blind attorneys. When I went to that particular advocacy event in DC, I met a whole slew of successful blind attorneys. That's what I wanted to do. I decided after I had had this experience that I wanted to help other people advocate. So I wanted to become an attorney, and I just kept meeting new blind attorneys who were successful. And one thing led to another. I identify as a member of the LGBT community. So it was a huge deal when I met a blind LGBT lawyer, or multiracial lawyers as well. All of these intersectional identities were huge for me to be able to feel like I could be successful, and that my identities wouldn't get in the way of that, and that they were nothing but an asset rather than a barrier. We definitely know that mentoring gap exists, and there's a huge gap for those with intersectional identities, multiracial people, people of color, who don't identify as multiracial, all different identities. There's a huge intersectionality gap. And I saw that when we tried to, when I was working in the Pathfinders grant program in Iowa, I was a peer mentor. And a lot of the mentors that we had there were white. There wasn't a lot of diversity in that. And it's not anyone's fault. There's just sometimes we have a hard time identifying those communities. Perhaps they don't know about the opportunity to help with the peer mentoring or other formal mentoring programs. And I can say that I didn't have formal mentoring until recently in my current job, when I asked a person to be a mentor, and it was an honor that she accepted that. But all of the other opportunities have been those authentic kind of organic mentoring opportunities that came up. I'm really interested in how we can increase those formal mentoring opportunities for all of the people with intersectional identities. How do we help develop that mentorship in those communities? I did see the power of it a couple of times when I was working in Iowa and Alabama in different programs for the blind, one in transition and one with adults, when I could find a couple of people who were interested in similar things and match them up. I remember one youth in Iowa who was Black, and it was very hard to find a mentor for him. But when we did, everything just clicked. It was a huge transformation for him to know that that he wasn't alone, that he didn't have to feel isolated, and that there were others that could help him to achieve his goals. So I think I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Ty. First, on telling us that Dan has been one of your mentors, which is so cool that we have you on the same panel. Love that when it happens. But also on reflecting back about the importance of the peers that you shared with us at the advocacy event, and how their input and influence started to help you envision what was possible. The last point, well, you made a lot of points, but one of your last points was about connecting with intersectional identities through role models. And this is a really important theme that we've heard a lot of. Jasmine's coming up next, but Jasmine and I worked with Sean Horn, and she happens to have a mentee right now who identifies as with several backgrounds and identities. And the mentee says Sean was the first mentor she had that was like her. Mm-hmm. And it is this idea of not just a professional mentor, but somebody who's a role model that is like you. Mm-hmm. And Sean identifies as a Asian American. I think she calls herself a half Filipino with cerebral palsy, and she's actually mentoring someone with the same identities. Mm-hmm. And it's so important, and yet our systems don't allow us to find each other. Mm-hmm. And so finding programming earlier on is what we're all about. So thanks for sharing that. It's so critical. All right, with that, hey, we're only at question 1, and we're coming to our last panelist. But it's really an honor to introduce Jasmine Bailey from the American Association of People with Disabilities, and ask Jasmine, I know a little bit about this, but I'll be interested to see what you share with us today. Jasmine?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So my name is Jasmine Bailey, and for an image description of anyone who needs it, I'm a 30-something-year-old Black woman of medium complexion. I'm wearing a white shirt that's sort of pleated at the sternum, and also pairing it with I believe a dark green sweater, and my hair's up in a curly faux hawk. And similar to the experiences of other panelists, I've had a great experience with mentorship throughout my childhood. Probably a couple of experiences that I'll highlight today is one, when I was a freshman in college, I was attending the Virginia Women's Institute for Leadership, which is an all-female Corps of Cadets. And within the first week, they had what was called Wilderness. And Wilderness was where all of the freshmen go out to West Virginia. I believe it was called Eagles Landing. And you do, you live outdoors for a week, you hike, you challenge yourselves, with obstacle courses. And it's really to get to know your fellow classmates and also to get to know some of the cadre leaders that are part of the program. And during that time, what I didn't know was they were evaluating sort of our personalities, how we would react in certain situations so that they could pair us with what we called our mentor sister Null. And during that time, I got paired up with Maggie Connolly, and she was such a big influence in my life. She was the person when during Wilderness, I was trying to do rock climbing. And I said, I don't know a lot of Black folks that rock climb, but she encouraged me, when I was struggling, trying to get up to the top. She was there to just support me and encourage me. And, outside of Wilderness, she was just always there to be a soundboard, to really think through, like, okay, how should I react in certain situations, how to be a better leader in this ROTC Corps of Cadets. And she just really helped push me, make sure that I was a thoughtful leader. And I really do believe that she helped help with my character development. During college, my senior year of college, I was at a military camp where it was a month-long training, and we were doing various activities outdoors, and that's where I acquired my disability. I now identify as a blind woman. And unfortunately, at that point, I was trying to not acknowledge that I had a disability and really pass as a sighted person, because I was very concerned about my commission in the military. I wanted to be an officer in the 82nd Airborne Division and do crazy things like jump out of airplanes. Although my school officials were telling me, you need to take a leave of absence, this is not going to be an option for you anymore. Maggie was there to say, don't listen to the naysayers, and to continue to strive for this goal that you've been working so hard for. Well, graduated college, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to commission due to my blindness. So later on, I wasn't sure where to go next, didn't have any sort of mentor that could really identify with my disability. And when I moved to DC, I got to know the American Association of People with Disabilities, was able to participate in their internship program. And it was just like a light switch where I was able to meet 30 different unique, like fabulous young folks and older folks with disabilities who were proud about their identity, were super smart, and it just really impacted me and led me to the work that I do now. I also was able to get in touch with the National Federation for the Blind and get involved with other blind organizations, which of course had a huge impact on my life. I now am able to participate in various functions. I'm able to participate in adaptive sports, something that I never even really considered during the early years of my blind journey. And right now, I think it's also sort of critical to not only have, like people mention, you know, these formal connections with mentorship, but the peer mentorship is also such an important part of one's development and growth. Not just talking about like, okay, how do I meet this professional goal, but also talking about the social aspects of how to have a conversation, you know, in a crowded, you know, networking event as a person who's blind. You know, as a person who loves fashion, being able to learn like, okay, what are some tips and tricks to ensure that, you know, my outfit is coordinated. So those are just a lot of things that I myself have been able to learn just from the connections of other blind peers. And I'll stop it there.
Jasmine, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing both about the importance of Maggie as a mentor in your life and, you know, helping at a couple points in time, and then connecting it over to your bridging into Aapd first through the internship program, and now obviously working there for so many years, and the importance of peer connection. A little note, one of the ways that Jasmine and I met was Aapd allowed us to use their space when the Mentoring Coalition was created over just about 8 years ago. And so that's how we first connected. It's great to have you with us and appreciate your mentoring story. All right, so now we're going to move into a question. I'll call it a speed round to get our answers a little bit briefer than the intros, but your stories were so critical. If we could just package those stories up, I think we learned so much from everyone's sharing, and there's a lot of lessons in there. We're going to flip it now to a little bit of the policy that creates the programs that are in place and examine those. And first, I'd like to start with our federal colleagues. So I'm going to go back to Carol and then Jennifer. So the question really is, when we look at current federal disability employment policies and the connection with supporting mentoring programs, how can organizations best implement these programs at the state or local level? And in kind of a part B of that, is there anything that we could learn from how they're being implemented, maybe to connect back to the comments we just heard, earlier intervention strategies, or where can we grow more role models to meet the needs that were just discussed? So Carol, over to you, please.
Sure. And I really value the fact that my former colleague from RSA and now a leader in VR agencies is on this panel as well, Dan Fry. So, I can speak from the federal perspective in the way that the law and federal agencies are collaborating to support mentorship relationships that are so critical to the ability of individuals with disabilities, including individuals who are blind, to obtain competitive integrated employment. So I'll start there. And then as we move through the panel, Dan can certainly add to the ways in which he has used the law and the opportunities provided to it to create mentoring programs at the state level. So just a little background about where we are right now in terms of providing pre-employment transition services, part of which encompass mentoring and self-advocacy training. Recent data from program year 2020, which covers July of 2020 through this past June 2021. That data is showing us truly the value of career exploration at early ages and what students with disabilities who receive pre-employment transition services can achieve. So right now, there are approximately 800,000 people who are considered participants in the VR program nationally, meaning these individuals have been determined eligible and are receiving at least one substantive service from a VR agency on their path toward obtaining their careers. So among those, of course, are students with disabilities. And students with disabilities make up more than, or I should say students and youth, individuals under the age of 25, make up more than half of the individuals involved at any point in time in the VR program. Of those, 200,000 students are involved in the VR program at any point in time. And of those 200,000 students in program year 2020, they received 1.7 million discrete services or discrete pre-employment transition services. So that 200,000 students I just referenced, that's an increase of 13% between program year 2017 and program year 2020. And the 1.7 million discrete pre-employment transition services, which includes peer mentoring and self-advocacy instruction, that is an increase of 57% between 2017 and 2020. So we can see there is a lot of progress being made there, and it's all very exciting for us to witness that in evolution in our program. Those career exploration services really come to benefit students with disabilities, who then go on to be able to identify their career goals, as well as the training and services that are needed in order to achieve those goals. And there are two important, what we refer to as WIOA common performance indicators that help us assess the success of individuals toward achieving their post-secondary education and credentials, and eventually their careers. So with respect to what we see in that data, we find that there's a significant improvement right now in the percentage of individuals who are eligible to achieve a recognized credential or to obtain skills in employment leading toward their career goals. We see what we call measurable skill gains happening. Those percentages have doubled in recent years over the period in which WIOA has been in implementation. And we also see that individuals who have been pursuing recognized credentials through the assistance of the VR program, we've also seen significant gains there in terms of the number and percentage of individuals who are achieving the recognized credentials through the assistance of the program. So we're very proud of that. You know, those pre-employment transition services, coupled with what that enables students with disabilities to achieve through their post-secondary education and credential opportunities, is really what is so important to students in order to achieve competitive integrated employment. We have a number of programs, of course, the pre-employment transition services themselves that are implemented and provided through our state vocational rehabilitation agencies. On the federal level, we have been engaging in a number of collaborations. For instance, in 2020, we began a year-long collaborative effort with the Administration on Community Living and the Office of Special Education Programs, through which RSA, ACL, and OSEP came together to support the provision of pre-employment transition services, other types of transition services to students and youth with disabilities, delivered in collaboration at the state level through VR agencies, special education agencies, and importantly, centers for independent living. And I specifically call out those centers at independent living, both the support they were receiving through ACL, as well as their implementation at the state level, because it's centers for independent living, where you find many of our peer mentors for persons with disabilities. We very much appreciate their willingness to engage with the VR agencies and special education agencies to provide that type of service. We know there are a number of agencies who work with SILs to do that, including Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, et cetera. So I just look forward to hearing more from my partner and colleague, Dan, about what is happening in New Hampshire and what other opportunities he may have implemented in other VR agencies where he has worked.
Carol, thank you very much. So Dan, we're going to get to you in a second, and we're going to finish out the federal perspective, and then we'll go to look to implementing at the state level and in other program models too. So just hold tight for 1 second. Thank you very much, Carol. We learned a lot there about the progress that we're seeing in specifically the number of discrete pre-ed services that are being delivered and the number of students receiving those services, and the common performance indicator showing improvement, meaning that the policies are showing they're working, and we need, in my perspective, to not only give this more time, but more attention and more focus, because we know it's working. With that in mind, we'll go across the street from the Department of Education over to the Department of Labor and ask Jennifer for your perspectives from the Labor Department's perspective about how employment support and connecting to mentoring, how are the policies working? Any thoughts about how we could learn from kind of labor or youth or minority policies in employment connected to mentoring?
Okay, Derek, well, just speaking for myself, so you invited the wrong person to do a speed round of anything. But I will, I do want to mention a few programs just very, very, very briefly so that people can follow up with us afterwards if they're of interest, because there is actually a lot of funding at the federal level from the federal level down to the state and local level to support mentoring. So one program is you can find through our American Job Centers, and of course the American Job Centers are in every state. There are about 2,000 of them across the country, and it's funded by the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. And the youth program, so the WIOA youth program, is a comprehensive youth employment program that serves eligible youth ages 14 to 24 who face barriers to education, training, and employment, including youth with disabilities. The funds need to go to serving a minimum of 75% of the participants who are out of school youth. So that does go to providing mentoring services. Mentoring is one service that can be paid for by those programs. And out of school youth typically are going to be a more diverse population and include a higher prevalence of young people with disabilities. So I think that's important. You can, the state and local areas can get technical assistance through what we call Workforce GPS. And that is a website sponsored by DOL. And the website is workforcegps.org. There is also a terrific program through the Department of Justice. It's called Mentoring Opportunities for Youth Initiative, out of the Department of Justice Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention office. And that funds one-on-one group and peer mentoring services to youth who are at high risk for involvement with the juvenile justice system, including youth impacted by opioids or those on probation, many of whom also have disabilities. And for ODEP, we have, for the federal government, we have something called the Workforce Recruitment Program. The Workforce Recruitment Program is a database of college students and recent graduates with disabilities who want to go into federal careers. You work with a federal employee as a mentor. They'll help you make sure your information is in good shape, that you can practice interviewing skills, that your resume is set up in a way that federal employees and hiring managers can really see the skills and abilities that you have, and that can contribute to federal employment. So all of these resources can also be found at the ODEP website, so dol.gov/ODEP. And we would love to work with anyone who wants to learn more about these resources. We have resources through our Employer Assistance Resource Network Technical Assistance Center, which we call EARN. And this is how employers can set up inclusive mentoring programs in the workplace. So more formalized programs to ensure that workers, particularly early career workers with disabilities, can enjoy mentoring programs like any other employee in a business. And the website for EARN is askearn.org, askearn.org. And then, of course, we have our wonderful, what we call CAPE Youth Technical Assistance Center. It's the Center for Advancing Policy on Employment for Youth. And this center is designed to help young people with disabilities transition out of secondary or post-secondary education into their dream careers. And there are several briefs and resources on CAPE Youth that show state and local programs how to provide that mentoring, that important mentoring support and service for young people with disabilities. So Derek, I will stop there, but love to talk with anyone outside of this panel to let them know more. Thanks.
Thank you, Jennifer. So obviously the Department of Labor is very active in this space, and part of that is just knowing what's available and where to get the information, and then how to connect into kind of your vision for your programming. A couple call outs there, the Workforce GPS site, you could sign up to get, I don't know if it's weekly or monthly emails, but around youth employment issues, including around disability. And I get those myself, and I'm always learning from Workforce GPS. The youth mentoring grant coming from the Department of Justice, Congress is currently looking at a $10 million increase to $110 million. This would be the largest grant of its kind for youth mentoring. By the way, that's the only line item in the United States budget that's solely dedicated to mentorship. So we support that at the Disability Mentoring Coalition. And the Workforce Recruitment Program for college students with disabilities has not only brought some of my greatest colleagues, they're also some of my best friends. So it's a great pipeline for talent. And of course, mentorship occurs all the time in that model. Thank you, Jennifer. So now we're going to shift to our other three panelists to talk about, well, when you have all these opportunities, what do you do with them? How do you implement them? And how do you learn from those implementations as well? So now we'll go to New Hampshire and Dan and ask, based on Carol's descriptions, it sounds like you did this in New Jersey and in New Hampshire, perhaps elsewhere, but what are your implementation experiences, and what can you offer building off of Carol's description there?
Well, thank you very much. And I want to acknowledge and thank Carol for her recognition of the work that we've done in New Hampshire and New Jersey to promote programs consistent with the pre-ETS and transition language in WIOA. And I think it's fair to say from the state perspective that it took us a little time to adopt and adhere to the new rules that existed or now exist. And because it did take time to understand how these new rules would be implemented, I'm delighted to hear that the federal numbers several years into the reauthorization reflect that a lot of pre-ETS work is happening. I'm personally very proud of the programs that I've had the opportunity, of course, along with my colleagues who do the bulk of the work, but to talk about some of the programs that I have visioned and helped to develop. In New Hampshire, we have contracted with a vendor because we are a small entity for blind services in this state, but we have contracted with a vendor to deliver 2 programs. The advocacy program alone is a program that we call our YES program, Youth Employment Solutions. And one of the things that is unique about this program is the collaboration that we have created between the Vocational Rehabilitation Agency and Services for the Blind and Vision Impaired, as we are a combined agency inside the New Hampshire Bureau of VR, and the State Department of Education, under which the Bureau of Vocational Rehabilitation sits, in an effort to make sure that we can recruit and capture as many blind and vision impaired people, students, as we hope to. We have agreed to have the Department of Education, after they've engaged in appropriate privacy and other tasks, give us the name of any blind or vision impaired student who has said, or whose parent has said, that they would like to participate in our pre-ETS programs. And getting that set of names directly from the Department of Education has allowed us to reach out to and pretty easily capture a number of people in New Hampshire to take advantage of these programs. And I don't know of any other state that has arranged to do this. Ours is still a little clunky as we work out the logistics of doing it, but I think it was a great way that we have developed an opportunity to comprehensively extend the opportunity for pre-ET services to these students. Consistent with that, we have adopted 2 programs here in the state of New Hampshire: our YES program, Youth Employment Solutions, and our ICE program, Interdisciplinary Collaborative Engagement. Our YES program is a program that is solely committed to self-advocacy. We provide an 8-hour training seminar to each student in each grade of high school, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. With each year, the content and the curriculum becomes more sophisticated, more demanding. But at the end of each year, there is a capstone project that the students must complete. And by the time they graduate as seniors, they are going to have had an opportunity to go to either Washington, D.C., or if there are no advocacy issues to be dealt with there, to our capital here in Concord to engage with legislators. That's at the top end of it, but they're also going to have learned skills of networking, of poise, of confidence building, and the like in the first year of their experience. In the 10th grade, they're going to learn about asking for what they need and getting an overview of what laws are there to support their needs. They're getting a description of what distinguishes assertiveness as opposed to aggressiveness so that they can employ effective strategies. And as I said, within each year, the program, the curriculum becomes more demanding. The YES program works on self-advocacy alone and is truly something that I think can become a national model. Now, our ICE program takes the other 4 required pre-ETS activities and puts them into a single program where we work on career exploration, soft skills development, and the other 4 or the other 2 types of services that go under pre-ETS. And every 3 months or so, we bring the students together for an intensive retreat. This has had to be somewhat modified by the realities of COVID, but every 3 months we try to do something really special. At the end of August, prior to going back to school, we had the students come for a confidence and end of summer development seminar where they went out into kayaks by themselves on a lake, where they ziplined, where they climbed rocks, where they participated in talent shows. Now, you'd think that just sounds like a fun camping getaway, but our counselors were charged with explaining to the students that these activities translate and help develop skills that will make them more self-confident. Megan, a young 15-year-old, participated in the program, and on the first afternoon, we invited the parents to sit in and to watch their children introduce themselves. Megan was so shy that she clung to her mom that afternoon. But when her mom came to pick her up 3 days later, she couldn't get Megan to get in the car until Megan walked around and got everyone's cell phone number with whom she had developed a relationship. She turned and started talking to her father about things she wanted to do. And her father walked over to me and said, "Mr. Fry, I have to tell you, I haven't seen Megan exercise so much extrovertism than I have today. Thank you for what you're doing." And Megan came back to our second fall foliage experience. And again, we taught this time how to operate in a reception when you have a buffet line, how to be in a networking conversation where you carry a cane, but also a plate of food and something to drink. And Megan was happy to do it and did it with skill and poise. And everyone else had similar experiences about growing. Now, in addition to those in-person activities on a monthly basis, we also have Zoom meetings where we have different topics on perhaps the right of accessible voting, or the right of employment, and bring in extraordinary examples of people who are employed. And in the ICE program, which I think is unique again, because I called it interdisciplinary collaborative engagement, we have said we not only want the students to participate, but we want their TVIs, their teachers of the vision impaired, and their parents to participate, sometimes at the same time simultaneously in a given activity, and sometimes in different rooms. But we want them all there because we all know what happens. You come to a program, you take advantage of it, you actually learn a lot, and then you go home to parents who didn't witness what happened, and you fall back into that practice of allowing your parents to do for you. But we theorized that if we have the TVIs present and the parents present and the students present, that everyone is going to be on the same page. And if they have the discipline necessary, they will all continue to support the skills and activities that we introduced both during the in-person activities and during the interim monthly seminars. So I don't know of a lot of programs that invite other professionals other than the students to be involved, but I think it has really proven an excellent way to guarantee that the students don't allow themselves to become complacent. Now, I'm sensitive about time. I could describe our EDGE program. It stood for Employment Development Guidance and Engagement in New Jersey, but I want to be mindful of our other colleagues and the time constraints under which we're operating. So I will defer to our moderator to tell me if you would like a description of EDGE.
Dan, thanks for that. First, for your examples with YES and ICE. Let's have you come back with maybe an example from EDGE in our final question. so we could go to the other panelists for this one. But let's recognize what you've accomplished with Yes and ICE. And I think you were in the same class as Ty. You must have mentored her in this acronym design, because Abide, Yes, ICE, and EDGE, you guys are all over the acronyms, doing a
Yes,
great job.
I enjoy the acronym building.
Yeah, so we have a colleague that worked with us on part 1 of this series, and maybe some of you are familiar with Ann Wei-Yi Kwong. She's now at Berkeley, but she's done some interesting work that brings in the supports, including the family members. So what you mentioned, Dan, is critical. And in some communities, we actually need the family members to be receiving culturally appropriate content as well. And so not only are we translating content, but we're also putting in those reinforcing supports, like you mentioned, Dan, that you've done in New Hampshire in the interdisciplinary collaborative engagement model. So thanks for these 2 awesome examples of connecting really RSA's intention and WIOA's intention and seeing it being implemented through your New Hampshire services. We're going to pivot a little bit now with Ty and then Jasmine. Ty, you mentioned a little earlier that you have experience more recently in a mentoring program. It sounded like it was in a student environment. Do you want to describe a little bit of that? I mean, what we're looking for is not necessarily connecting to the specific PREETS funding, but to the notion that mentoring is an important strategy to drive inclusion, and to share a couple of the things that you've learned from that experience.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my experience with that is actually quite similar to what Dan just described with the ICE program. And in fact, I had suggested maybe doing that professional connection. We had trouble implementing that, but because of people's schedules and not being able to come to some of the events, but we really did want to get that parent-teacher involvement as well. We did the quarterly retreats with the students. We did a lot of career exploration and a little bit of that personal development, the soft skills things. And then we also had mentors working with the students monthly and on a regular basis, just on an ongoing basis. And I participated in that as a mentor, a peer mentor. So not as a planner of the program, but as a mentor. And then later on, I actually worked at the same organization, the Iowa Department for the Blind. So I was tangentially involved with helping kind of with those particular mentoring relationships, but I was not directly involved in planning that. And then later on in the Alabama Institute for Deaf and Blind, the mentoring that I was participating in or helping to plan was just between students. That was definitely an informal mentoring arrangement. And we were hoping to kind of formalize that, but that did not happen while I was there. But definitely some informal mentoring on career development, on trying to find those intersectional identity connections where they could be found, helping people find, specific mentors that had been in similar communities to them and had similar experiences in their lives. So that's kind of the extent of that. But Pathfinders was my main involvement, which was very much like Dan's ICE program.
Thank you. Ty, in a very short answer, you included one-to-one mentoring, kind of a mentor match description. You included group mentoring, and you included peer mentoring. Do you recommend that all of these options, and of course you've mentioned the importance of natural or informal mentoring in your own life. What do you think is a blend of all these really what you would say is a takeaway, that not just one form of mentoring, but the best way to support youth and youth towards transition to employment would be to offer different forms of mentoring?
Yeah, I think that blended approach is really helpful because you get a lot of different things out of a group than you would out of an individual. For example, that whole thing I talked about earlier with going to DC to this advocacy event with the NFB, and a bunch of people were there, and that group learning would not have taken place if it was just a one-on-one situation. Same thing with the actual mentoring programs that I've been involved in. The blend is very helpful because you learn a lot from the different people. Like Dan's example with Megan, you don't get that same extroversion or that same confidence build through a one-on-one generally as you do with a group activity, especially one that really stretches takes you out of your comfort zone and stretches your capacity.
Nice, thanks for that. And Jennifer had a shout out earlier for Terry Hartman Squire, who's on, and yesterday we all participated, well, many of us participated in a cool group mentoring model called Lights, Camera, Access, which actually started with funding from the Department of Labor. So group mentoring is a great way where we all learn from each other, and it gets back to that reciprocal model as well. All right, thank you, Ty. So we're going to shift over to Jasmine now. And Jasmine, I'm going to ask you to speak directly to AAPD's internship program, the summer internship program that is just one of the best things on the planet. And in that model, you embed mentorship. And to speak to how you embed mentoring as part of the internship program experience and some of the things that you've learned from that.
Sure. So thank you for the question. And yes, so just a little bit of a quick background about AAPD's summer internship program. So it's been around since 2002. We have about 400 plus individuals who have gone through the summer internship program, which many say it is a transformational experience. Being able to traditionally being able to come to the DC area and be placed in various work environments. You could have the opportunity to work in a congressional office, a federal agency, nonprofit, for-profit organization for about 10 to 11 weeks. And one of the main components of the summer internship program is to have a mentor, which is very crucial to the program. We organize it where we try to look at what interns are looking for with regards to their professional goals. So we try to match mentors based on that. And we also acknowledge that, outside of professional goals setting, there are other aspects that interns want to be able to connect with their mentors on. There are many shared interests that individuals want to be connected with their mentors on. So we really try to look at a holistically, which pairs will work and will be beneficial. But, for many interns, they definitely say that their favorite part of the internship program is being able to have a mentor that can help with the thought process, be able to identify resources, think critically about how to get from point A to point B. And we, for the past couple of years, the summer internship program has been virtual, which, staff, we were trying to understand, will it be just as impactful as doing an in-person mentorship? And, based on our last evaluation from the 2020 and 2021 classes, they state, I think it was 28, there were the total of 28 interns. About 96% of that 28 said that the mentorship aspect was very important to their development during that 10-week internship. And then 92% of those individuals say that they're going to stay connected with their mentor. So clearly there is a need and there is a great impact for virtual mentorship opportunities.
Jasmine, thanks for bringing up the virtual aspect of mentoring. That's a question that we were going to talk about today and we're not going to get to, but you just hit it for us. And in July, we also had the opportunity for Maria Town, your CEO, to host a mentor-mentee discussion with two of your program participants. And what we also learned from that is when we have the positive influence of a mentor to a mentee, those mentees often become great mentors. They figure out the model of the relationship and then can reach out to someone else themselves. And so a program might have 25 matches in it, but what we're creating is an incubator for kind of a scalable model itself. So we're going to shift now to our final. Oh, go ahead, Jasmine.
Oh, and I was just going to make one last point. I was going to mention this, but last year, Aapd, we did officially launch our alumni network. And to your point, I mean, that has been such a great opportunity to use program graduates, use their experience, because obviously they've gone through the program, and be able to, pay it forward by becoming mentors themselves. And we do strive to use our alumni to become mentors for the internship program.
Awesome. Thanks for adding that important piece. We'll now shift us to our final question. And so to Jennifer's point, this will be our speed round. I've appreciated this conversation, and all the details are really important. So it's hard to rush through them, and I appreciate this, but we are going to be a little short on time for our final question. I'm actually going to stick with you, Jasmine, if you could come back on the screen, and we'll kind of work our way from Jasmine back to the front side. So if you had a recommendation about improving mentoring or mentoring programs, what would that recommendation be? That will be our final question for today. Jasmine, could we start out with you, please?
Yes. Am I off mute?
Yep, I can hear you. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, sure. So like I touched upon in my previous response, definitely having that virtual component to any existing mentoring programs is very critical. We hear often that, Zoom fatigue is real. It is a real phenomenon. And in most cases, people do want to have the opportunity to meet in person. However, we have noted that over the summer, we through our programs have plenty of opportunities for alumni and interns to connect with each other, whether it's through social networking events, whether it's through a virtual panel discussion. There is a lot of value in having remote events and social opportunities for young folks to connect. One program that we had recently was our virtual career and internship fair. And one thing that we included at the beginning was having all of the young participants, and they were a mix of students and job seekers with disabilities. And we told them to give them their 30-second elevator pitch. And really the thought behind that was to have the company presenters know who's in the audience and be able to tailor their presentations accordingly. But after the program, we received emails from parents and students who were saying, we enjoyed the career fair, but what we really loved was the elevator pitch. And the reason being was, as someone mentioned earlier on this panel, it's thought that people with disabilities don't have aspirations and goals. And for some of these younger folks to see that, okay, there are plenty of folks with disabilities who, want to become a doctor, who wants to become a lawyer, who wants to start their own nonprofit. That's very impactful. And it starts them to lead them down the path of looking for opportunities, specific to their needs. So I would definitely say having virtual convenings is very impactful. And then also one quick thing that I want to mention is also ensuring that, diversity is being reflected in not only in the mentee pool, but in the mentor pool. It's very important for folks to see people that look like them and be able to connect and reach out to them, based on those sort of shared backgrounds. So that would be the 2 points that I would want to make.
Jasmine, thank you very much. On your first point about virtual connection, the Mentoring Coalition, along with Mentor, the partner I mentioned, have called on the Department of Justice to ensure that the $110 million in the Youth Mentoring Grant could be applied to virtual connection. It used to be, unfortunately, before the pandemic, e-mentoring was removed as a category, and we've called for them to replace e-mentoring as a flexibility to ensure that many members of our community, which are most at risk during the pandemic and also have transportation challenges, could have access to more e-mentoring solutions. Thanks for that. And you also hammered home the theme of diversity and mentees and mentors, and we've heard that throughout other comments. Awesome. Ty, any final recommendation from you for improving mentoring programs, please?
Yeah, I think reaching out to those minority organizations to help with diversity would be very helpful. And the same thing with accessibility, making sure that when we are putting together these programs, we reach out to community organizations, organizations for the blind, organizations for all disabilities to make sure that what we're putting out is accessible. I echo everything that was just said about diversity in these programs.
I thank you for bringing the A of Abide back up. I think it's important that if we design programs for all these participants, that we ensure that the front door is always accessible. And we know that inclusive mentoring throughout the country is not. One of the things that we're working with in 2022 is NDMC and Mentor will be partnering to create a supplement to the effective practices of mentorship. If you didn't know it, there's a guide to mentoring that exists that shows evidence-based mentoring, and we'll be adding to that, and we'll be working with Ty on how to ensure that this thing is accessible, and that might bring in Katie too. So we'll rope you into that because it's a great opportunity to change mainstream mentoring to make it more accessible. So thanks for that offering. With that, let's go back to Dan. Dan, looking at the experiences you've had with YES, ICE, perhaps with the EDGE program, anything that you would say, you know, here's a recommendation to improve more opportunities out there through mentorship?
Absolutely, and I'll try to keep this brief in terms of offering a couple of quick recommendations. I won't spend the time to describe EDGE, but it had similar characteristics, although it may have been a more robust program. I want to first acknowledge that our colleagues at the federal level, particularly at the Rehabilitation Services Administration under Carol's leadership, have been as generous and as flexible as they believe the law will allow them to be in allowing state agencies to be creative and innovative in how we develop and create these programs, paying opportunities and the like. But if I were to offer a recommendation, it would be that a reevaluation by the feds of how PREETs can operate might allow us to have greater latitude in what we can do. And I won't spend the time here outlining examples of what I would like to see, but those conversations have occurred between the professional organization of state agencies for the blind and RSA, and any flexibility and latitude that can be allowed to permit us to create more robust, more engaged programs would be appreciated. And the final recommendation that I would make is that you look, no matter what program you're in, for high quality mentors, that you ensure that you have protocols in place before you introduce mentors to children that guarantee that your mentors are safe and secure, and that they are experienced and the like, but particularly that they are safe and secure people with whom we can trust our vulnerable youth. Having a program that has that kind of underlying policy component is important for safety and for making sure that we create those trusting relationships that Jennifer referred to earlier in her presentation. Thank you.
Dan, these are excellent recommendations. Summarizing a reevaluation of the experience and looking to allow for flexibility and innovation, where we're getting the outcomes and milestones that we all desire. And then secondly, looking for high quality mentors, and we'll look at that through kind of the structured approach. This is where the elements of effective practice do look at the safety of your program and what policies and procedures are in place. Also tell you that the Disability Mentoring Coalition launched this year for the first time ever a disability mentoring certification program that looks at these elements, that takes folks that are in mainstream programs and kind of bubbles up all of the elements that they should be thinking of. And that's a partnership that we have in place. So thanks for those, Dan. With that, we'll go over to Jennifer Sheehy for your recommendations. Jennifer?
4 words, Derek. Universal design and group mentoring. Okay, that's 5. But just to increase those opportunities. So universal design means that you don't have to have an inclusive add-on to a mentoring program, that it's designed accessible from the beginning. And I think we all know the value of that. And then group mentoring, just to expand the opportunity to, as many people as possible, where the individual mentoring doesn't reach the demand. And I'll leave it there.
Excellent thought. So let's design this for all from the beginning, and that way we don't need a retrofit. So this is a big shift left in design, and build it in from the beginning. And then second of all, the importance of group mentoring being emphasized, where many people get access, and then we spawn off of that mentor matches and other forms of peer mentoring too. Thank you very much, Jennifer. And Carol, we're going to wind up with you today. What recommendations do you have after, perhaps thinking about this, listening to the other recommendations? What offers do you have for us?
Sure. And first of all, I want to say to Dan that we welcome further conversation at RSA with NCSAB and other VR agencies around what flexibilities you believe are available that have not yet been provided under the law. So please reach out to us, and we'll continue those conversations. I am not going to limit myself in terms of my recommendation or recommendations to a number of words like Jennifer just did and run into some trouble. I'm just going to limit myself to one comment, one recommendation, and that is collaboration. Both collaboration in terms of identifying the mentees, collaborating with, for instance, the schools in order to identify students with disabilities who need mentees. Then also, of course, the collaboration that is necessary with the schools, with Centers for Independent Living, with other organizations serving individuals with disabilities in the states, disability consumer organizations like the NFB, et cetera, all of which are very important in order to deliver the mentoring opportunities. And you see how, I think the examples that Dan gave of his programs and projects in New Hampshire are all provide examples of collaboration on both sides of the mentoring relationship.
Excellent, Carol. Thank you for bringing up this notion of collaboration. I think it's a great way to sum up the panel and appreciate the Career Connect Center and the National Transition Conversation of creating this collaborative space to explore policies in the programs that will provide inclusive mentors and mentoring experiences for more youth, young adults, and adults with disabilities across the United States. To Carol, Jennifer, Dan, Jasmine, and Ty, I thank you very much. It's been my privilege to be able to chat with you all about a passionate topic of mine, and that's inclusive mentoring. And with that, I'll hand it back to Richard. Richard.
Derek, thank you so much. Thank you and our panelists for your expertise, your personal stories this morning. And I can't thank each of you enough for your time, and we're all busy. So thank you all. You are all welcome to stay, and we will take a short break, and we will ask our other panelists for panel 2 to get ready. We'll go there. We'll start at top of the hour. So if you need to take a quick stretch, that's completely fine. And Olaya, are you still with us? I'm sure Olaya is there.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry.
All right. And
get to the unmute button.
And any of the panelists past or coming up, if you want to put any of your contact information up in the chat box, you're welcome to. Derek and Steve, likewise as well. You're all able to stay on as panelists. And I'm going to see if Paul has joined us.
I'm looking. I don't see him yet.
Not yet.
Yep, not yet, but I'm sure he'll be
but
jumping on here pretty quickly.
So we'll take a short break. If folks have questions in the chat, you can put them there. I do want to mention in the space of mentoring and some of the things we're doing around transition, when Olaya mentioned earlier about the ConnectCenter, we also have our transition hub, and I've reached out to several of you on the panel and those of you in the audience with our transition hub. And what that is, it's a place where you can go and gather information on residential and non-residential transition programs around the United States for high school students and those looking to learn more about independence, self-sufficiency, work experience, all the pre-eds things we're talking about, including mentoring. And we have over 40 in that space right now. And if you go to APH ConnectCenter.org, you can look up the transition hub, and from there you could do your research. And we launched it early August, July 31st to be exact. We are updating that often, and if you know of programs that don't have a listing there, let us know. It's in its infancy, but it's a great way to look for mentor programs, residential programs, and transition programs to help youth and young adults take that next step in life.
I just texted Paul just to verify that he was going to be jumping on here soon. So I'll let you know as soon as I hear from him.
And hello to lots of you in the audience who I know, who Katie knows, Olaya knows. Thank you for joining us this afternoon and morning. We welcome your feedback, and we definitely want to keep mentoring on kind of on the subject and what we're doing with that space. So let us know how you want to contribute. Let's check in with our panelists. Sylvia, are you there? Good afternoon.
I am here.
All right, Sylvia with AFB. We'll do formal introductions in a moment. Just making sure you're on mic and you got a good presence there. Olaya can help us with kind of the framing.
There, I'm putting my camera so someone can tell me if I'm good.
I think you're. Yep, that's good.
Okay,
we gotcha. Yeah.
How about Mark with AER? Good afternoon.
Hey
Mark.
there, how are you? Good. And as Olaya knows, the water gets shut off regularly in my building. I guess they're worried about leaks or something. So I TMI, but yeah, my camera will be staying off so that you can, those of you who can see a happy smiling dude in a suit at the east room of the White House at the signing ceremony that we went to. You will not be seeing my spiky hairdo. So.
All right. Well, Mark, and get out and welcome. Let's see. Anil, are you with us with the National Federation of the Blind?
I'm here. I'll be right there with you.
All right. All right. Great. You're good. You're good. Just doing a mic check. And how about Dan and Cheryl with the American Council of the Blind?
Dan, I'm here. Good shape.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Welcome. And I did see Cheryl earlier. Cheryl, are you on board?
You're on mute if you're talking, Cheryl. We can't hear you. There you are.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm here.
All right. Welcome.
Can you guys see me? I don't know. I turned on my video, I think.
Yep.
Yes.
You're centered. It's perfect.
Awesome. Thanks.
Sylvia, you need to move your camera more to your right. It's like, I don't know if you're walking up more, your other right.
That one?
Nope, the other way. Because now, a little more.
I could just turn off my
There's a,
camera.
no. There you go. Now we've got you. You're
Oh,
right in the
there.
middle.
Well, that just feels so close. I'm
it's
actually
fine.
holding my phone.
Okay.
I'm holding my phone.
I gotcha.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
no.
why. Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Your
You
arm
get
might
carpal-
get tired after the first hour.
Yeah, I was going to
so.
say she's going to get carpal tunnel after
I
90
know.
minutes.
Hand exercises, switch left, right.
Right.
And then she'll be bouncing all over the place while she does her hand.
Hey guys.
Yeah.
There's
Oh,
Paul.
hey, Paul.
Right on time.
A real quick thing. I was doing an interview for my last job about a fitness thing about a year ago, and it was on Zoom, and I was holding the phone. And as soon as they panned into me after the commercial break, what do? I pull my phone out, my headphones fall off, and I missed the interview. The 30 seconds.
Oh my God.
Luckily, our executive director in Sacramento just came right in, but I was preparing all morning for this shot, and I had my fitness challenge shirt on, and it was just fumbled. So yeah, that's an embarrassment. So don't do that, Sylvia.
I'll try not to.
Right.
Hey, Paul, you might
how's
need
the
to.
camera angle?
I was gonna say you might need to tilt your camera up a little, just a little more. There. Perfect.
Yeah, not in my normal location, obviously.
No worries. We're just glad you're here. Nice.
Had a momentary snag of the key card not working. Like, holy shit! All my stuff's in there.
No. Of course, that would happen right when you need it, right, to work, so you can get in. Oh, yep. That's
Well, we'll welcome everyone back, and again, we are part two of the Inclusive Mentoring Employment Policy Summit with the American Printing House of the Blind ConnectCenter. And I want to welcome everyone back and thank you all for participating this morning. Again, this webinar is being recorded, and you will be able to retrieve that from our webinars page shortly, in a week or so, and we'll definitely get that out to you. And thank you all. I want to introduce Paul Schroeder, our Vice President of Governmental and Community Affairs, to host and network with our second panel. We have folks with AER, AFB, ACB, and NFB, and we'll go into the explanation on that. And Paul, good afternoon and welcome.
Hey, good afternoon, and thank you, Richard. I appreciate that. Delighted to be here for this panel where we're talking about mentor programs, transition support, ways in which we can help individuals move to transition, however you want to define it, to college, to careers, etc. We're excited for this, and thank you for the opportunity. And I want to thank so many colleague organizations for being with us today. I've worked with a couple of these organizations in the past, so it's delightful to bring everybody into one room. And I think a couple of us have kind of revolved around through a couple of these organizations over time. So it's nice to have everybody together. We've got the American Council of the Blind here, represented by Dan Spoon, the president, and Cheryl Cummings, I think Cheryl's here, the chair of the Multicultural Committee. The Association for Education and Rehabilitation of the Blind and Visually Impaired. Sorry, captioner, I just wanted to say it fast. Mark Reichert, the acting exec. American Foundation for the Blind, Sylvia Stinson Perez, the chief program officer, who's relatively new to AFB. So delighted to have you with us. Anil Lewis, the executive director for blindness initiatives at the National Federation of the Blind, also with us today. So we're gonna have a lovely conversation, I think a spirited conversation about mentor programs, the importance of mentors in our lives. And I'll kick this off by just observing that I think all of us, first of all of us on this panel are blind or visually impaired, and secondly, all of us have had, I think, individuals in our own fields who have been committed to helping us in our leadership and in our efforts to move through various career trajectories, and I appreciate that. I had an individual early in my life who, in my career, who in many ways helped me come to grips with some of the challenges that I wasn't dealing with very well related to blindness. Although I've been blind all my life, there were things that I probably wasn't acknowledging and working on as much as I should have. And I credit an early colleague of mine at the Governor's Office of Advocacy for People with Disabilities in Ohio, who was a little bit older and had, I think, already wrestled with and come to grips with some of the issues that I was dealing with in working with myself as a blind person. I also will say that all of the organizations in this group have had a profound impact on my life. Working at the American Foundation for the Blind, working with Carl Augusto, who was the then CEO, extraordinary mentor in helping me in my career. Of course, National Federation of the Blind and the American Council of the Blind, I have derived so much benefit from both organizations in my life, and have learned a great deal from both, especially early on, coming out of college and having a chance to meet older blind adults who I hadn't seen a lot of as role models, and just seeing the success that these individuals had. And of course, the Association for Education and Rehabilitation, which has been such an instrumental part of providing services in our field. And of course, Mark Riker is a long and dear friend of mine. So it's wonderful to have everybody together. Let me kick this off, and maybe I'll start with Dan, if you want to start this a little bit. Introduce yourself, and if you want to share a mentoring story, perhaps quickly, on an important mentor in your life, what you gained from that, that would be great. And then we'll just kind of move through the group alphabetically as I introduced you. So ACB, AER, AFB, NFB.
Well, thank you, Paul. It's an honor and a privilege to be here today representing the American Council of the Blind as our ACB president. My personal journey with blindness is I was diagnosed with the retinitis pigmentosus when I was 8 years old. So I've kind of been in transition and through mentoring, I would say my entire life, and I'm now in my 60s. So for over 50 years, I've been going from low vision now to no vision, and all that, that journey entails as you're kind of going through those experiences. And as the president of the American Council of the Blind, it is truly our president, our officers, our board, all of our committee chairs and members, we're all volunteers. We're a grassroots organization made up of state and special interest affiliates, 68 of them across the country, and over 300 chapters throughout the United States. So really a truly membership, volunteer-driven organization. And personally, I would say from my mentoring story is, kind of comes from unlikely sources. The journey of transition and employment when I graduated, went to the University of Florida and got some help from the Division of Blind Services. I'd say fairly small help for readers and that type of stuff, but graduated first with an undergraduate degree in finance and then an MBA concentrating in accounting, and really was struggling to get jobs and get employment at that point in my life. And my roommate, Lou Nostro, and his family owned Italian restaurants in Orlando, Florida, and kind of took me under their wing as a mentor and taught me the pizza business, taught me how to make dough and grind cheese and run a business. And I worked with them as a volunteer just to learn when I got out of college, because I wasn't getting any traditional employment opportunities. And, a high school friend of mine then opened up our own pizza place, DG's Pizza, Dan and Jerry with a G, and we put the I's in there to make it look Italian. And for the first 7 years of my working career, I ran and operated, a pizzeria. And really it was through the mentoring of friends and colleagues that kind of, taught me the business, how to do it. We're there to answer questions, buy equipment, and the learning that came out of that was just amazing. And I don't think I'd have ever gotten started through my career journey without some mentors who really took the time and the patience to work with a low vision individual and teach me the skills I needed to do that job. So from that point on, I always seeked out a mentor that could help me in what other career aspirations I was moving into. So That's my short story.
Great story, but you shouldn't be talking about pizza when it's lunchtime, Dan.
Yes. Sorry about that, Paul.
Cheryl, do you want to give us a quick mentor story?
Sure. Hi, so I'm Cheryl Cummings, and I'm the chair of the Multicultural Affairs Committee at American Council of the Blind. And, thinking about this, I realize that although I haven't had any sort of formal mentors as it concerns my career, but I have had informal mentors. Mm-hmm. So thinking about when I was in college and other students who, African-American students who, got involved in my life and helping me to think through what my majors could be, and talking to me about how to courses to select and programs to pursue, and just how impactful that was. Similarly, once I got out of college, I think I was really motivated by sort of my own career goal. And then there were people along the lines, again, I'm saying not formal mentors, but a lot of peer mentors. And once, so I had a chance to work for a little while in Washington, D.C., and then serve as a Peace Corps volunteer. And a lot of that grew out of talking to other people, meeting blind people who had like really fantastic aspirations for their career and who were supportive and encouraging. So again, as I said, no formal mentors as yet, but I've absolutely had a lot of informal mentors. And I should say I've had the experience myself of being a mentor to a young woman who was blind in college.
That is great. And we may want to come back around to talk a little bit about us as individuals and the experiences we've had of being able to be a mentor, which is such a powerful experience. Mark, you got a quick mentor story you want to share?
Sure, thanks, Paul. So Mark Reichert here, AER, for the two people who probably don't know, AER for 36, 37 years as well. Our history goes back a lot longer than that, but since we kind of merged the education and rehab professional groups in our field since the mid 1980s, has been our field's largest and frankly only cross-disciplinary and certainly cross-education and rehab professional association. So if you work in the field in one way, shape, or form, you either are a member or you ought to be, and we'd love to talk with you about it. And I expect, Paul, as we get maybe into this panel, I'll have another opportunity to talk a little bit about AER's continuing work, and particularly with respect to transition and mentoring. My personal story, so somewhere in my condo here, I have what was a legal memorandum, a brief, essentially. And this goes back, let's see, I think summer of 1994, after law school. It was about a year and a half or more. It was a tough time, trying to look for work, and, had all the experiences of having the lawyer at the fancy K Street law firm say, you seem like a very impressive young man, but we don't think you can work here because we don't have any Braille phones, which is weird. So in any case, so got an internship that summer, actually, at the American Foundation for the Blind. And the hot issue at that time was video description, and the fact that we were trying to get video description built into federal law, and we were not particularly successful that round. One of the reasons why there was such pushback from the broadcast industry, motion picture folks and others, and essentially saying any kind of requirement like that on us to provide description violates our constitutional rights, First Amendment rights. Just outrageous. So yours truly was the little young Eagle Beagle who was put on the writing of this brief. The reason why this is important, because on the cover page, so yours truly got top billing, which is very kind of my boss at the time, Scott Marshall, but then his name was on that front page. And then there's another name on that page, and that name is Paul Schroeder. And so I look at that and I say, maybe one of these days we'll put that, maybe the American History Museum might want that or something. I don't know, or someone's mom. But in any case, I look back at that and I just love the fact that I have it, because here's my little name on a document with two people who, how in the world did I know were going to change my life? Scott Marshall, he's 70 now, works at Federal Communications Commission, actually, ironically enough. Was a mentor, friend, first guy I met in Washington, D.C., one of the first blind folk to graduate from Harvard Law, just a force of nature, amazing, incredible person, who has for sure been a mentor to me, but who would never say that. I think if for as outgoing as he is, if he were on this call, he'd be embarrassed that I've spent this much time talking about him. A guy that doesn't get very embarrassed very easily, though, is Paul Schroeder. And I have to say, so I worked for Scott for a little while, but not very long at AFB. And then Paul took that role over, and I did 2 tours of duty at AFB. Altogether, I don't know what, Paul, probably 17, 18 years you and I have worked together. And I just have to say, when I reflect on my life as an adult, I mean, I am so spoiled. I'm so blessed to have not one, but 2 people who for sure have been hardcore mentors for me, but who both with tough love and also but good fun did play that role, but were never overbearing about it. We're always available to talk, give ideas, joke around about things, and boy, there is just nothing. It's spun gold to have people like that in my life. So I've never had this opportunity before, but Paul, I'm so grateful for you, and thank you so much for your friendship. And I'm going to stop now and go back on mute before you all hear me get all choked up. So thanks.
Well, thank you. It's been an honor, and I remember that work. I remember the healthcare work even more.
Sure.
There was this young, sharp lawyer that I didn't know I would be working so long with, and it's been a pleasure to do so. Thanks for that, Sylvia. Got a mentor story you want to share?
Sure. Well, I will say that I'm probably like Dan. I grew up with low vision and really kind of didn't even know anyone else. And then I came to a point where I started losing vision, and mentors were so important to me to help me get past that, to learn that I could still have a full life, a full career, etc. And so I've been really blessed to have both informal mentors and some formal mentors that I've sought out who were both sighted and who were blind over the years, and to set up mentor programs and be a mentor. And truly, I think that peer mentoring, and I even just heard an older lady say to me the other day that made all the difference to her in her adjustment to vision loss. So we talk about the transition, and as we're younger, how important the peer mentoring is, but at all ages, it's critical. So thank you for allowing me to be here.
So glad you are. And Anil, so glad you're with us as well. And I wonder if you have a mentor story you'd like to share.
Sure. My pleasure. I want to start by highlighting Mark, tough love and fun. I made a little note of that. I think that's really important in the mentoring relationship. When I talk about mentoring, I guess I have to start basically with family. Luckily, I had an extended family of cousins, whatever, and we did a lot of tough love and had a lot of fun growing up together. And just being born in the city, it was necessary to have that collective group of individuals to help establish a positive identity, despite society's expectations for a young Black man in the city of Atlanta at the time. And I was sighted and go blind until I was 25. And my father passed when I was 6 years old, so I was absent a live-in, Black male role model. But luckily my uncles stepped in, and some other men in the neighborhood kind of served as role models. And I think it's important to understand that there are good mentors and bad mentors. I also received some, let's call it some interesting mentoring as well, where if I would have followed that particular model, it would have taken me down a different path. So it's important to make sure that as you're going through life and deciding the mentoring relationships that you really buy into, that they're positive ones. And lucky for me, I'm a product of the Boys and Girls Clubs. So my mom knew well enough that I needed to be put into an environment that had more positive mentoring role models for me to learn from. And I owe so much to the Boys and Girls Clubs of Atlanta. And in that whole space, before I went blind, I think it's important to understand that all of those elements helped me establish an identity, right? As a blind person, my own authentic identity, right? So it wasn't like a homogeneous perception of, as a Black man, this is who I should be. And I think that's important because it gave me strength and inner self. In 1989, I went blind due to retinitis pigmentosa. Over the weekend, I lost enough sufficient vision that I could no longer read my computer screen or perform the job that I had at the time. But luckily for me, shortly after, I wish it was sooner, I found the National Federation of the Blind, an organization founded on mentoring, right? Even from our founder, Jacobus Timbrook, he was mentored before he started this most transformative organization of blind people back in the 1940s. And he then in turn mentored Dr. Jernigan, who was a substantial leader in the organization, who in turn mentored Dr. Maurer, who, by the way, was a significant mentor for me as I became a blind person. And he has in turn mentored Mark Riccobono. Interestingly enough, the reason I was highlighting the fact of establishing an identity as a Black man, when I came into the organization, there weren't a lot of Black leaders within the NFB. And I realized that it was not a lot of Black leaders within the disability movement at all, because my first mentors as a person with a disability really were more in the independent living environment. Pat Puckett, older white woman, polio, used a wheelchair. Mark Johnson, also a wheelchair user, white male. They really helped me understand and start gaining an identity as a person with a disability that was unique and authentic to me. So they shared their life stories, but they gave me space to establish my own identity. And then knowing who I am as a person who's blind within the space of disability also is a nuanced piece that a lot of people don't really understand. But luckily for me, I did establish a positive relationship with Dr. Maurer at the time. And even though he's an older white male, he gave me space, right, to really still be authentically who I was or am as a Black man, and learn from him and his life experience, his lived experience, to really find those components that would make me still strong and a strong, positive self-concept of myself. And he also in turn introduced me to Mark Riccobono, who's the current president now of the National Federation of the Blind. And we became basically peer mentors, starting in the leadership training fostered by the NFB. We have continued since 1999 to continue to challenge each other, to raise expectations for one another and to support one another, and to have that tough love and fun that's important, I think, in mentoring relationships. I think it's important to understand, that now as an organization, we're a nationwide organization, 50 affiliates, well, 52 affiliates, all 50 states, plus the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, many hosts of visions, et cetera, really mostly around specific blindness aspects like entrepreneurism, lawyers, et cetera. But now we've expanded more of our dedicated work to like diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have a whole committee now that's really focusing on trying to create more space in that area. And that's evolved into a Black Leaders Serving for Advancement group, which if that existed when I was there, I would have been so much further along this path of establishing my unique identity through the intersectionality of being Black and being blind. And we've expanded it to Muslim groups, LGBTQ, blind people with multiple disabilities. Again, creating that network of individuals that we in turn can tap into as a resource to help build our mentoring programs. I look forward to talking about our formal mentoring programs as we go on through the panel. But I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. So thank you.
Anil, thank you so much for those comments and a little bit of the history of how you engage with NFB. And I want to stay with you to talk a little bit about programs more formally and what you're doing. I'm going to start with NFB and ACB as the two consumer-led groups in this. And it's interesting. We're all organizations that are working in the blindness field. We're all in leadership positions in those organizations here at this Zoom table. And so I think all of us are working to provide various kinds of supports and services to allow individuals to pursue whatever their dreams and opportunities might be. And so I want to start with you, Anil, and talk a little bit about what the Federation is doing, and then Dan will go to you or Cheryl, whichever of you wants to tackle what ACB is doing specifically around building mentor programs. Give us a sense of that so people can start to kind of delve into what they might expect from your organizations.
Sure. I mean, as I stated earlier, the NFB is founded on mentoring, right? As a civil rights organization of blind individuals, we capitalize on the lived experience of all of our members and that close interaction towards specific goals of achieving equality, bring us close together. in informal ways, but also formally through specific initiatives. But we have really started mentoring in a formal way back when I was still the NFB of Georgia president. And we partnered with the Rehabilitation Services Administration through a grant in our national center to develop mentoring programs throughout several affiliates throughout the country, which still exist today. But on a national level, what we've done is we've developed our career mentoring program based on the opportunity that's presented through the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. The previous panel talked a lot about the pre-employment transition services that are available. The difficult piece, of course, is making sure that our particular model fits within the structure of the federal framework. A lot of it is data-driven, and we respect the need for data. But a lot of what we do within our programs is really not necessarily measurable through obvious statistics. Our impact that we have on young blind people is through a lived experience. And sometimes when they want us to put our programs together, and we've complied and put them together to a static existence, right? You need to have 2 hours or 4 hours of this for this criteria. So all the 5 areas we provide that, but the beauty of it is because we are an organization of blind people, we continue to be able to support that through the network of opportunities we have for blind people to engage. So the mentoring program is a framework, our career mentoring program. I'll put some information about that in the chat a little bit later. Is a framework that complies with the federal requirements to provide services under the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, but it's supported through the network of our organization so that the mentees that participate in the formal programming also develop real authentic relationships with members of the organization that sustain that relationship throughout the programming and even beyond the programming. And I think that's important. And the other program I really like to highlight, because there's so many others, but these are the main 2, is the one that we have with the Pearson organization. We have been very adamant about making sure that young blind people get exposed to successful blind adults. But one of the things that we want to give our students an opportunity to is to really practice the skills that they learn through those experiences. So the Pearson mentors are sighted individuals. They work in a professional environment, and we do not provide them any training on blindness, because the whole goal of that Pearson mentoring relationship is to give our young blind people an opportunity to interact with professionals in a way that they can practice the skills that they learn to cope with public attitudes and to educate professionals about their capacity in a safe environment, so that when they do go out to apply for that job or look at interacting with a specific organization, they've tried and tested their skill set to be able to engage and interact with those individuals that still commands respect, demonstrates capacity, and can build relationships. So those particular programs are the ones I really like to highlight in this particular space.
That is excellent. And of course, we'll certainly make sure people have contact information if they want to follow up on anything they hear today with an opportunity to learn more. Dan or Cheryl, who wants to take the ACB programs?
Sure, Paul. This is Dan. I'll start and then kind of turn it over to Cheryl. So wonderful thoughts from Anil. I really appreciated understanding NFB and their efforts inside of mentoring. The American Council of the Blind, as you all know, is really it's founded on grassroots membership-driven organizations. So we have a fairly small, lean staff, and so it's really important for our members to take a really active role in our entire organization. Our vision is really the American Council of the Blind is made up of blind and low vision people working to foster voice, choice, and community. And this really, I want to point out that, you know, this last year, we're trying to do a much better job of measuring our accomplishments and not making them all anecdotal, but really putting numbers behind our activities. And this last year in 2020, we had over 40,000 hours of volunteer work done by our members that we were able to, you know, have actually officially turned in and measured. And what that volunteerism allows is for individuals who are blind and have low vision to really take an active role inside of the organization. We have over 40 committees that are all run and driven by volunteers, blind and low vision folks. And this is just a wonderful, I think, mentoring opportunity that you get an opportunity to become a member of a committee, then grow to a vice chair and ultimately a chair. But what it does is gives you that opportunity to take on responsibility and take on work. And so I think that has been a really wonderful mentoring situation inside of the American Council of the Blind. In addition, here over the last 2 years with the pandemic, we have launched our community events. And this program has just grown by leaps and bounds. I think two and a half years ago, none of us probably even hardly knew how to spell Zoom. And now we live it each and every day. And through our members and work of 2 core staff individuals that are both blind, totally blind, we have developed a community events calendar that hosts over 400 community events each month. They're all hosted by blind people, facilitated by primarily blind people. We have had now over 6,000 events over the last 18 months that have reached out and touched over 250,000 contacts of individuals attending these community events. We've trained 140 Zoom hosts, blind Zoom hosts who can work in that capacity, as well as 175 facilitators that lead panels. And these peer mentoring efforts go everywhere from exercise to socialization, training. We have support groups. We now have a blind AA meeting that takes place every week on this platform. People dealing with being widows and widowers, divorcees, just dealing with all kinds of issues, training on Apple and Vespero products, and it just on and on and on of all the opportunities that this community has provided us. And it has really created just an amazing organization of mentees and mentors that I think have really energized and grown our organization. In addition, formally, we have a JP Morgan Chase Fellows Leadership Program where we identify 5 leaders each year from our local affiliates and chapters that have the potential to kind of grow into leaders at the national level. They have a full scholarship to attend our convention, attend our Burl Colley Leadership Institute trainings. And from this, we have now graduated, I believe we're up to about 70 leaders through this program, and we're seeing them move into increased levels of responsibility, both as affiliate presidents, board members, and just seeing them grow in confidence through that formal mentoring program, which has also had a caveat where we have reached out to people from the ages to 20 to 40, forming a next generation group, which again was the funding for that was infused by JP Morgan Chase that allowed us to bring a group to Washington, DC and have them meet in person for the first time, which then led to a next generation committee and now a next generation affiliate with their own officers and members and bylaws, and they're really flourishing. So I think these, along with one of our 9 key programs that we now have inside of the American Council of the Blind, is information, referral, and peer support. We coined the phrase ERPS, and we see that as just a vital component of the American Council of the Blind. As we started to do more analysis and data research, we realized we get over 2,000 calls a month into our offices of people who are dealing with vision loss and are looking for someone to help them through that journey. And so this has become a very important program inside the American Council of the Blind. And I think before I turn it over to Cheryl, I'll just leave it with kind of what Anil said. What really makes me sad is probably less than 10% of our blind and low vision community is a member of a a blindness membership driven organization, whether it be ACB, NFB, or blinded veterans. And so I would really encourage anybody listening out there, take the opportunity to join a consumer group. It will be the best mentoring you ever receive. And with that, I'll turn it over to Cheryl to talk about some of our committee work at the national and state level. So Cheryl.
So I'm just going to highlight, I think, one of the mentoring programs that is done by one of our affiliates. So ACB Texas have for many years had a youth program they call the Youth Advantage program. And that's a day-long program that's open to youth 13 and up. That also involves their family members and professionals working with the youth, but it really focuses on aspects of career exploration, aspects of gaining advocacy skills, and also, introducing people to different types of technologies that's available. And as Dan said, it's an initiative that one of our state affiliates has been doing. The other thing I'd like to say is the Multicultural Affairs Committee, which is a board of a ACB board committee, has been and is starting to work on developing our own sort of mentoring program. So that's another I think aspect of giving folks an opportunity to gain some gain skills which can assist them certainly within their development of leadership roles within ACB. And those skills we anticipate are also transferable as they think about careers and they think about other opportunities that they would like to pursue in the community.
Thank you, Cheryl and Dan and Anil. And I'll just add my comment. I mentioned at the top that both ACB and NFB meant so much to me in my early stages coming out of college and trying to figure out who I was and what I want to be. And I've made friends for life in those organizations. So Dan, I echo your point about the importance of joining and contributing and being involved in a consumer organization. It's so powerful. And of course, if you're a professional in service working with AER, even if you're whether you're pursuing leadership in issues around blindness or whether you want to be able to pursue opportunities that have nothing to do with disability and blindness, you will gain so much. You've already heard both organizations talk about relationships they have, for example, with companies. A great way to make those networking connections that are so important, especially as a young person. Sylvia, I want to talk with you a little bit about what AFB is doing in the mentoring and transition area as well.
Okay, great. Well, first, let me start by just commending ACB and NFB for just really capitalizing on the whole virtual world. I have to tell you that all of your activities stress me out. And you know why they stress me out? Because I'm like, I don't have time to do that. I want to go do that. I'd rather do that than what I have to do. So I just love all of the amazing activities. And I have spent my career as a social worker, rehab teacher, even as a CEO of an agency, telling people you need to get involved with your consumer groups because this is the connection you need. These are the connections you need. And now I'm telling you more than ever, I just love what you guys are all doing. And I can't wait till I actually have time to participate. So please keep doing those for at least 20 more years so that when I retire, I can participate. It would really be helpful. But I'm so surprised to hear about the 10% of people are only, that number involved in consumer groups. I wish we could really move that up because it is life-changing. So at AFB, which I literally have been at less than 2 months, We have a blind leaders program, and this is an interesting story. So probably 6 or 7 years ago, and I can't, Paul and Mark probably know, it was a conference that at an AFB leadership conference in the DC area. And afterwards, Carl asked Kirk and I to sit down with him and talk a little bit about leadership. And the main thing we were discussing is how few blind leaders there were, not only in, the world, but even in the field of blindness. And we said, we really need to do something about this. And we kind of quickly put some concepts together. And now those have come to fruition in the past couple years. And so the Blind Leaders Program it has a fellow and a mentor who are both blind, and we're focused on mid-career level people. So from government, not-for-profit, and corporate. And this year in the second cohort, there's 21 pairs, and it's a pretty even cross between corporate, government, and not-for-profit mentors and fellows. And we have some exceptional people participating. And so we're working on not just the leadership skills, but how do you incorporate the blindness part of that? And all of us who are blind know, just think about the whole concept of walking into a giant ballroom and figuring out, okay, how am I going to navigate and network here? So all of those pieces are so critical to learn. And who do you learn those from? You learn those from people who walk that path and who've figured that out in some way. And that's the program that we have right now. And as the new Chief Programs Officer, all of you who know me knows there's more to come. And one of the things that I will say is I so look forward to figuring out ways to partner with each of you, because there's a lot of great programs out there, and there's a lot of people who need everything all of us does. And so figuring out how we can maximize each other's strengths is really key to really creating leaders in our future.
I so appreciate that the American Foundation for the Blind has put that investment and effort and funding into creating that. And of course, National Industries for the Blind has also done a fair amount of work in investing in developing leaders who are blind for organizations. Do I recall, Sylvia, were you part of that program? Or
I was part of that. Yes, I was.
So Mark, let's come over to AER and hear a little bit about how you look at mentoring, what kinds of programs AER might be doing.
Sure. I think it's probably no exaggeration to say that mentoring, peer-to-peer, professional to professional, one-on-one or in groups, as our O&M friends like to say, one-on-one or in groups, this is what AER is all about, for sure. I mean, AER's got a finger in all kinds of different things, but for sure at the heart of it is connection and facilitating that connection, being as supportive and break down barriers between and among professionals so that they can learn from each other. And if they're wanting to debate with each other, that they can do that in a as fun and friendly way as possible. Yes, if you hear a smile in my voice, that's because that's not always easy. But even in those debates, right, where people are getting together and hashing out what's the appropriate practice, what are the appropriate practice standards, or what do we really believe? Those kinds of discussions can be strident, but boy, are they ever productive in honing our values and understanding that. Anyway, so I think for sure, that's sort of the umbrella thing I would want to make sure folks take away about AER is this, especially if you are a professional in any way, shape, or form, working with kids, adults, and older folk who've experienced vision loss to whatever degree and who may have additional disabilities. We need you because you're whatever you have by way of background, even if you're brand new to the field, then great, you have things to teach those of us who have been in the field maybe too long. again, smiling, hopefully, because as a new person, you are bringing, frankly, fresh perspectives. Hopefully you're not jaded. There'll be plenty of time to make that happen. You know, you're coming with a fresh perspective and brand new ideas that may be shocking, but good. Shock us, because we need it. Same thing is true for folks, of course, who've been in the field for a good long while. This just priceless experience to bring to bear. So, you know, the two things I'll flag here, and then I'll be quiet for now, is, you know, I hope folks are aware that AER is moving full speed ahead with doing an in-person show, and as fate would have it, when that show happens in July from July 20th to the 24th of next year in St. Louis, Missouri, it may very well be the first major, you know, bring everybody back together event that we've had. It's not the first conference that'll be done in person, but, you know, different groups have different focuses, and some of them are sort of, you know, those conferences may be niche-y or focus on specific areas. This is really sort of the come one, come all event. And, you know, some of us have really, really high hopes for next summer, because it'll really be the first time. Great opportunity to come and, you know, if it's hanging out at the bar or in one of the gazillion sessions that we're going to put on, breakout sessions and otherwise, I mean, it's all about mentoring. That's exactly what these people do. It's literally, we're not just shipping in a bunch of people who, you know, from Mount Olympus, who think that they know it all. No, you're learning directly from your peers in the field, and there's nothing better than that. Last thing I'll say, Paul, is we're very, very proud of the fact that even though we had to let our conference go last summer for obvious reasons, that really lit a fire under us at AER to build a new continuing ed platform, aerelearning.org. I've said this directly to the Perkinses and the APHs and others, but I'll say it publicly. Nobody, least of all me, thinks that this new continuing ed platform is anything like a competitor to anybody else. It's not how we view it. It's frankly a way to make AER's contribution to that panoply of amazing professional development opportunities that are available out there, but also to be, frankly, a clear benefit of membership. So the way that we've priced this out, our sort of business model for this, it really definitely emphasizes the value of being an AER member, because you can get in and be part of that. If you were to go to aerelearning.org, and I hope you will, we do have a growing catalog of content on transition. Not as much, I'm embarrassed to say today, but about mentoring. But you can better believe that yours truly and a few others, I expect, based on this catalytic conversation you guys are having today, are going to go back and say, you know what, that's a big gap among many that we need to fill. So thanks for lighting the fire about that.
Yeah, and absolutely look forward to learning more about that. Of course, conferences are such a wonderful place for mentoring to happen. Cheryl, I saw that you're going to be leaving shortly. I want to ask you and Anil. We'll start with Anil first. I'm not sure exactly how to ask this question, but I guess you both have kind of talked about role modeling.
Well, you may want to start,
diversity.
not to take over I think she said she had a hard stop at 1, so that gives her. It's up to you.
Well, we can go to Cheryl first then, and then you know, whichever.
Just being respectful, yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I wanted to ask about role models and kind of helping to build and develop a mentor-mentee relationship. And so, what are your personal thoughts, or what does your organization do to kind of help structure and set up role models? Do you look to try to connect people across identities or to similar identities? Is that important from the mentor-mentee standpoint? And I just wanted to probe a little bit to get some thoughts on trying to drive a mentor relationship as opposed to just facilitating opportunities for networking to happen and hoping that a good mentor relationship comes from that.
Yeah.
So Cheryl, we'll go with you first.
Oh, thank you. And again, I apologize. So I think there is value in creating mentor-mentee relationships where the group or the folks that are paired together reflect some of the same identities. I think in the first panel, we heard from people who said how important it was that they were able to be mentored by somebody who looked like them and who to some extent had the same disability, because there were just issues that came up that they really wanted to explore within that type of relationship. So there's absolutely a need to do that. But I don't, at the same time, I don't think that precludes you from having a mentor-mentee relationship that isn't so matched, because as we've talked about here, there are times when what you absolutely need is you need to be with somebody who's like you, and then there are other times when what you need is something else, and you need maybe somebody who is, you know, a level up or a level or two up from you, who can help you sort of navigate the path you need to go through to be able to get to you know, pursue your career goals, or even your personal goals, or your, you know, goals as it pertains to being an active member in your community. So I suppose I'm saying I think there needs to be both. I don't think there's, I think there's so much value in people having the option. So maybe what we need to do is, when you think about developing a mentoring program, make sure that that the programming is, I think as one of our previous panelists said, that it's universal and that it's diverse. So that if you've come across somebody who says, what I need at this moment is I need to be mentored with an African-American woman who is blind, you know, and so that you have the capacity to say to the person, yes, okay, we've got somebody here who can mentor you. And then, you know, maybe if somebody says, that's not important to me, what I just need to understand, or to understand how to, you know, I just need to build my networks and develop some skills, and I need to just understand how to be part of X group. So I don't want to keep repeating myself. I just want to say, I think both, you have to be open to both opportunities for people.
Thank you.
Sure.
You may take a stab at it.
Do it. Jump in.
I would expand on what Cheryl said, and say it's more than an option, it needs to be an imperative. When we first started doing the formal mentoring program, we were following mentoring models, and they had matching models to do interest evaluation so that you could pair your mentee with mentors with similar interest, skills, abilities. And that was supposed to be, and there may be some statistics out there that shows that then you have more sustainable pairing, and that may be the case. But what we recognized is that it was very difficult because there is such a low incidence population, and we don't have a strangely large, diverse group of individuals to meet all those various expectations. And then we were feeding into more of those mainstream silos. So what we did was we did our best to do the matching. But as I explained in my own mentoring experience, the individuals that taught me to develop an identity as a Black man were not the same individuals that helped me develop an identity as a blind man. And when I became blind and was experiencing intersectionality between Black and blind, and only looked for mentors that were Black and blind, I would think I would have had limited opportunities to learn and grow. I think that finding those similarities is important, because there's some degree of comfort to knowing that you're not the only one out there experiencing these particular challenges. And you can learn some of the strategies that are important to overcome some of the problems related to this direct intersectionality. But overcoming the challenge of society's perception of me as a blind person, not encouraging me to learn Braille, or not encouraging me to travel independently. You know, my white brothers and sisters within the Federation were able to help me with those particular pieces, just as well as anyone who was Black within the organization. So I think that we should strive to meet those intersectionalities. But I think if we do that to isolation, then what we're doing is we're prohibiting that individual from being exposed to other opportunities and other experiences that will help them grow. I think that because of my experience with individuals, despite having very similar characteristics, then I was able to obtain a skill set that otherwise I would not have. And I've been exposed to other opportunities that I would not have. And one of the things I always like to focus is, regardless of the makeup, because we paired mentees with mentors with no real obvious synergies. And they've been some of the best relationships because people are expanding their interaction and their knowledge around different things that otherwise they wouldn't have. But in everything that we do, we focus on, in the Federation, really infusing what we call the 5 essential elements of success. And I'll just go over them briefly. But one, first and foremost, we work on making sure that that person has a positive self-concept as a blind person, that it's okay to be blind. That's first and foremost. And I also offer, in this particular context, in our formal career mentoring program, we don't just have individuals within the NFB being those mentors. We look at successful blind adults, and that's the criteria for being mentors in our mentoring program. And as long as you can help another person establish a positive identity as a blind person, overcome society stereotypes and misconceptions around blindness, then you can help mentor our young people. Next, we hope that they will encourage them to master the alternative skills of blindness, including Braille, cane travel, access technology, home ec, et cetera. As a matter of fact, before I actually became affiliated with any consumer organization, there were 2 older women, white women within the ACB that were the catalyst for me recognizing I need to learn Braille. So, I mean, I love them for the role that they played, because that's been an essential tool that I had to learn to master in order to be successful. So as long as you're a blind person who believes in the capacity of blind people and recognize the importance of mastering those alternative skills of blindness, then we want you to be a mentor. We also teach them to deal with the misconceptions of blindness. They're out there and they're pervasive, and people have to develop a skill set to do it in a way that still maintains a degree of dignity and respect in the environments in which we travel. And even more so, the 4th one is blending in, which is different than coping with the public attitudes, because many people become the blind person that's the mascot within the groups, right? Oh, there's that guy, he's a cool blind person. And as long as they think that you're the cool blind person, it's hard to be seen as a peer and an equal, and recognize that you're a competitive and fully participating member of whatever team you're associated. So that's why the Pearson mentoring program is so beneficial, because it gives our mentees an opportunity to interact with those individuals that have those preconceptions, that have those stereotypes, and then it gives them a chance to really shift their paradigm and develop their own authentic way of doing it, right? Because we all know that there's no right way for any one person to get society to understand that even as a blind person, that they have capacity. So it gives them an opportunity to do it. And if we do it right, that 5th element of success is we give them and instill in them a spirit of giving back. The reason that we're able to be such an effective change agent in providing mentoring services historically without any real public assistance and support is because the individuals who have been mentored then pay it forward, and they become mentors to other mentees. And we continue to evolve as an organization, taking advantage of that particular desire. And if we do our jobs right in our mentoring programs, and aside from this, all of our programming, we instill a mentoring component, whether it be one of our STEM programs, whether it be our Teacher of Tomorrow program, whether it be our Braille Enrichment Literacy Through Learning program, all of our programs, we instill a mentoring component and take advantage of blind mentors in the provision of those services and the execution of those programs. But if we do it right, then we can instill in them a desire to really want to continue to build the National Federation of the Blind and continue the work that we're doing to help blind people live the lives they want.
Excellent. Thank you so much. There's 2 topics I want to make sure we touch on before.
Paul, if you don't mind, I just wanted to say one really quick thing about that.
Please.
So we're talking about mentor matching, and I think Anil and Cheryl both had great valid points. But I think another part is to make sure we teach people how to find their own mentors as well. And a mentor is someone who just sees your potential and is able to help push you to that. And so I know that over my lifetime, I've observed people who I thought, well, they have traits that I want to have, or they have skills I want to have, or they know people I want to know. And so I've approached them either in an informal or informal way and said, hey, I'd like you to mentor me, etc. And, more recently in the past several years, I've had people approach me, same thing. Is They want those kind of connection skills or knowledge. And so teaching people how to find mentors themselves and connect and be committed to that relationship, because the commitment on both sides is what really makes it work, when both the mentor and the mentee are committed to that.
That was excellent. Well stated. I appreciate that.
And Paul, this is Dan.
Hang on, just if you can hang on just a moment. I just want to say that the things I want to make sure we get a minute to talk about remote issues and how to make sure we support remote mentoring. And then I do have another question I want to come back to, but Dan, go ahead.
I just want to add on the other piece of that, we are all non-for-profit organizations. So we're businesses. And as that, there's an intentional portion of this that we cannot, we've got to be aware of. And that is, as we go through our budgeting process, what's really important inside the American Council of the Blind, and I'm sure in the other organization as well, is we put money in the budget for these activities. We put money in the budget to enhance integration of Spanish language, to do mentoring programs, to do peer support. So I think it's okay to say we're going to talk about it, but what is really important as an organization is that we put our money where our mouth is and we actually budget funds to do these activities, and we're truly intentional about it.
Absolutely, good point. Excellent. And I want to stay with you, Dan, because I want to talk with really both the American Council of the Blind and the National Federation of the Blind in particular. You both work with youth and young adults, but particularly youth, maybe under age 18. And I want to just hear a little bit about the steps you've taken to ensure safety and security of those mentees who might be matching with mentors that your organization is supporting and trying to help develop and foster. Clearly, it's on the minds of a lot of us, I think, to make sure that we're ensuring security and safety in these environments. So we'll start with you, Dan, and then I'll go to you as to what steps the organization's taken to ensure that.
Very much so, and we really strive inside the American Council of Blind to create really a safe, respectful, and welcoming environment. And as part of that, we have established a formal code of conduct that really lays out, the expectations of the fact that as we have events, they're going to be done in a very respectful way, with no bullying, with no, any kind of assault or any kind of inappropriate activity. And we put a process in place for reporting any misconduct, for a formal evaluation process, and then for corrective action to take place. So I think it's really important to have those pillars in place inside of your organization. We've also adopted a formal set of 5 core values, which are integrity and honesty at the top, and then respect, collaboration, flexibility, and initiative. And we formally share those on our website and talk about them at all of our meetings. So I think it's become really important, and we're also trying to drive that down through our organization to our as well separate EIN numbers, but our state affiliates and local chapters, because it really is important. It's the lifeblood of a consumer group that they need to know when they participate in activities, they are safe and welcoming. And I know Anil and NFB have been doing the exact same thing. I had a conversation with Mark Riccobono about this just last week, so I'll let Anil share his thoughts as well.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's important to understand that the Federation has had a code of conduct for many years and processes for reporting. But I mean, and I'm glad that we're asking this question in such a public way too, because I think that the social media has really taken it to a whole different level. We as an organization really strive to be fully participating members in society. And we as an organization recognize that blind people are a subset of society. A lot of people like to think that blind people are wonderful and, innocent, et cetera. And that's not true. We have the good, the bad, the ugly in the broader community. And even with those protocols in place, our code of conduct, our reporting procedure, et cetera, it's not a perfect system. But two things I like to say. One, as a result of the social media outcry from survivors related to some of the participation in some of the Federation programs, I was awakened to this whole societal ill. I didn't know that it was so pervasive. And then, of course, with the evolving social norms that are being created through the Me Too movement, a lot of the behaviors that were, I'm not going to say were, I'll say permitted or were, there's less tolerance, and I think it's rightfully so. So society is evolving, and we as an organization have to continue to evolve. So what we've done is we've strengthened our code of conduct in many ways. We've enhanced our reporting procedures, but even more so, which I think is more important, we have prided ourselves in integrating a degree of self-confidence in the individuals that participate in our programs. And now we're supplementing that or enhancing that with even more consideration around how to frame it around the areas of consent specifically, right? Being very intentional about that. Because people talk about the consequences to the perpetrators, but we have to also put as much energy as we can to make sure that any victims have the wherewithal, the self-confidence, the skill level to not be perpetual victims, to be able to have a voice and speak up and speak out for themselves. And the interesting paradox is, if you see some of the testimonies from some of the individuals, they've talked about the interesting piece of how the Federation philosophy that's integrated into our programming gave them the strength to speak out. So I'd like to say that that's us being very transparent. If you go to NFB.org, you can see how we've outlined all the things that we've done to deal with this. And it's just frustrating for me, for people to try to identify this as just an NFB problem. And I know this is me secondhand too, because I've just been enlightened by it. But I think it's important for us to recognize that it's a societal problem, and we have to continue to deal with it in a way that will help overall society. And lastly, I'll say that once the spotlight was shined on this particular issue, the Federation didn't run from it. We ran toward it. We were very proactive. We're engaged. We got third-party consultants with expertise in the area. And we think that we have developed a model that others should be following.
Yeah, thank you both. It is an area, of course, of concern for any of us who are organizing conferences and involving people, not just across the age range, but people with varying levels of self-confidence and understanding and engagement in the world. And I appreciate the lessons that both of you have kind of shared. I did say that I wanted to touch on remote mentoring as an area. This was something, of course, that the American Foundation for the Blind started in years ago with something which is now Career Connect, part of APH, but of course was Careers Technology Information Bank, and was an effort to try to connect people not in the same geographic vicinity, but who had an interest in perhaps the same job area. And it was a remote connection. And I'm just going to throw this open to anybody who wants to jump in. What steps have you done? What are some lessons learned to try to make remote mentoring successful? Needed to do that for the pandemic, of course, but we need to do that in general. And no, you mentioned low incidence. It's not always able to find somebody in your geographic community who could be a good mentor for you.
Well, maybe, Paul, this would be a time to jump in a little bit about some of the things we've tried to do at AER with respect to our new continuing ed platform. I mean, of course, the standard sort of cliche model is send out a Zoom link, pick a date and time, get your presenters, pile in as many people as you possibly can in the room, do a chat, and there you go. What about trying to, especially for those, and we did this early on, as Dan, as you were saying, you made me smile about people being able to spell Zoom. So, right, it's such a steep learning curve for how to do it. Now, I'll let others judge whether AER did as good of a job as we should have on sort of the coaching, if you will, for newbies to the whole world of technology and all of that, to say, yep, here's how you do it. We're going to be using a lot more of this. So information is power, and we were trying to do that. I think that is for sure something we wanted to emphasize, and I think we can certainly do more in that area. I do want to, in answering your question, Paul, do want to follow up on something that Sylvia said, which I think is key, which is it's one thing. Now, in my case, my two best of friends and mentors and bosses just kind of fell in my lap. These not literally. I just want to say that make you smile, but they just happened. When I do think it makes a lot of sense to be intentional in who you pick, for sure, and but that flip side is also true, which is, what's the expression? Lay down with dogs, get up with fleas. I mean, what I'm thinking of right now is, quite frankly, all of us in blindness over the course of time and organizationally have had our troubles. This is not the time or the venue to talk about all kinds of crazy stories that the old timers used to tell me about parties of professionals and agency heads and hallways of hotels that should not be talked about. And thank God some of us in the field have grown up past then. The point I'm making is, sometimes I think people make compromises in who they choose for their mentors. This person has some skills I really think I want to tap into. Maybe they're a little edgy in some other areas, but this is what I really want to do. And honestly, when you make that assessment about sort of actively reaching out, remember that it's important to make that conscious evaluation of character. Frankly, it sounds like a totally obvious point, but I think it's important to have that literally at the top of your, as it were, my potential mentors checklist. Amazing if they have contacts, amazing if they've got knowledge to share, but boy, oh boy, character and values govern it all. To come now full circle, Paul, back to your question to wrap it up. I mean, I think one of the things about remote mentoring and that kind of interaction, you would think that doing stuff remotely would spare you any of the potential crummy things that people do to one another. And yet human beings are resourceful and not always creatively. And so even in a virtual environment, you can have people who are disrespectful, saying do things they shouldn't. And so one of the things that we do not have yet in AER, clearly we've got clear HR policies, but in terms of organizationally, I think we too need to be thinking about how we can not just prevent bad things from happening, but frankly, how we actively create a culture where that sort of respect and lifting other people up with our comments. Fine to disagree, that's fine. I'm all for a good debate, but to find a way to do that creatively and to document that in writing and as Dan, as you were describing, sort of inculcating it throughout an organization is key.
Thank you, Mark. Who else wants to jump in on remote? And you also touched a little bit on the duties of the person seeking a mentor, because we have some obligations if we're in that role to determine what we're needing, what we want, checking out the individual and determining if this is somebody we really want to have a connection with. Mm-hmm. And I was gonna say, I'm gonna invite you to jump in on this.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So I think most people know, prior to joining AFB, I was at Mississippi State and the National Research and Training Center on Blindness and Low Vision. And as the director of the Older Blind Technical Assistance Center, we actually started remote virtual meetings prior to COVID. So we were actually in a really solid place to capitalize on that. And so we held these, I am so proud because we were able to hold these virtual meetings with the OIB program managers from across the country. And each month we regularly had 30 states represented in those meetings. I think an important thing to keep in mind, and I say this both from personally participating in groups virtually and running them, is that organization is key. Having a plan, making sure people can actually use the platforms. And so several mentioned having trainings, and I think that's so important. Knowing, and then, keeping the groups to sizes that are manageable. So use of those breakout rooms, if possible, really do allow for people to connect in that one-on-one or small group setting. So organization, and then opportunities for people to really connect to each other and have meaningful conversations that then they can take offline and build upon.
Yeah, Paul, this is Dan. We've learned a ton over the last few years, as Sylvia's saying. I mean, you know, it kind of started out as the wild, wild west, as Mark was saying. Get a Zoom invite, send it out, and see what happens. And we really have developed a lot of organization over the past couple of years. So really putting a set of policy and guidelines in place, doing official training and certification for our host, our Zoom hosts that run, you know, responsible for kind of making sure the meetings run properly, doing rules as far as sharing, you know, phone numbers and those type of things in a public setting, and the danger involved in that, as we found people were being harassed, eliminating the waiting room feature so people couldn't be excluded from a meeting because somebody saw somebody they didn't like and not let them in, you know, rules of conduct around behavior inside of the meetings. So it's really evolved over time to get to I think a good organizational place. But from a mentor-mentee standpoint, what it has really done is eliminated that geographical barrier. And so, as Anil was talking about earlier, with small incident populations, you can now pull people together remotely from, you know, just really not only across the country, but around the world. We've got people from Dubai and Norway and, you know, India and all kinds of places participating in our events, as I'm sure everybody else is realizing as well. And it's just been a really amazing opportunity to put like-minded, easy for me to say, like-minded people together to become mentors and mentees. You know, just one area which is not something that interests me, but blind people doing crafting. And that started out with one call. We now have 17 events a month. They have a community Facebook page with, I think, you know, hundreds of members. They're organizing their, you know, all their own activities and doing all their own stuff. And then out of that, some of the leaders of that organization are now, you know, becoming leaders in advocacy, in convention planning, and all kinds of areas of the other areas of the organization. So really providing that safe, welcoming, respectful environment and in allowing people to connect has really made a difference. And I have to share one last challenge, because now the world is not just virtual. As we get ready to plan our 2022 convention, it's how do we have a successful hybrid convention where we're going to have, you know, 1,000 people in person and another 1,000 people, you know, participating virtually. And how do we have good experiences for both of those folks and allow them to interact in a positive way? So the word for 2022 is hybrid.
All of us who do conferences, we ought to get on a platform together and talk about how we do that well, and as we go forward, the lessons that we learn, because we're all going to want to do it. We don't want to lose the benefit. Yeah. There were benefits from a virtual conference.
And depending on how those conferences go, we may need to talk therapy afterwards too.
That's true.
Any
yeah, I mean, the first thing I'll say is virtual is insufficient. I just want to put that out there. I think that a lot of people are looking at virtual being the substitute for in-person, and it's not. It's insufficient. It's a tool that we can use. But before I go into that little piece, I want to echo what Mark was saying. You know, even in that environment where you think it's safe, once we introduce Zoom to the world, we also simultaneously introduce Zoom bombing to the world. So it's like wherever you find a space that deviants can thrive, you know, if they only use that energy to do something good and positive. But anyway, so the success of our programs has been that direct interaction with successful blind adults. You know, demonstrating the skills of moving around independently, reading Braille efficiently, cooking and cleaning for themselves. And a lot of that in-person experience really makes the difference. Two things. One, moving into the virtual was kind of we ripped the Band-Aid off, right? Because at COVID in 2020, we made it maybe about 2 months before our convention, the decision that we're gonna have to go virtual. We're not gonna do this in person. And normally we have 3,000 people, at our in-person conventions, but that virtual convention, we had 10,000 unique participants. And I'm saying that to say, it may sound like contradicting what I said earlier. It was wonderful that we had so many more people that were exposed to the Federation and the philosophy in our programs, but we really did miss something by not having that in person. So there's a balance there that we have to recognize. And we did a lot of learning through that. And I have to be a little bit proud of the work that we did, because in that short period of time, we executed a very good virtual conference, and we've done it again this year. So love to have that discussion about how to do it really well. The other piece I'd like to offer as an example is, see, our BEL program, our Braille Enrichment Literacy Through Learning program, we offer 2 weeks of Braille instruction to blind students over the summer who are not getting Braille or sufficient Braille instruction in their school system. And again, we teach them not only Braille, but travel, independent living, self-concept, problem solving, et cetera. And that's done best in person, but we couldn't do it. So we did what we called our BEL in-home edition. So we kind of tried to get the best of both worlds. So since we could not work in a space where we provide the supplies for the students and they worked with their mentors who volunteer their time in these programs, we actually put together a box of supplies, and we mailed those boxes to 300 students around the country. And we set up virtual Zoom experiences, and we had teachers of blind students that were teaching these classes virtually. We had volunteer members that were being the kind of virtual parapros, for lack of a better term, and it was good, right? But it was not as good if we were able to get them in person. So the learning that comes out of that is, historically, when we had the in-person BEL programs, unfortunately, we weren't able to reach a lot of the students, especially some in the rural areas who couldn't come to the major space where the BEL program in person is being hosted. So moving forward, we're going to be doing both. We're going to be offering the in-person for those who can participate, and we're going to be offering the BEL in-home edition for those who otherwise would not be able to participate. But in our goal of offering that virtual, whether it be the virtual experience in whatever way of participating in our convention or any of our programs, our ultimate goal is to get people out, because 2 things are important. One, learning the skills only is retained through the demonstration and the utility of those skills. So we have to get them out of the home environment into the world so that they can continue to practice and enhance the skills that they're taught. And then secondly, we do ourselves a disservice if we as blind people are not interacting within mainstream society. We will never shift the perceptions that the misperceptions that they have about blindness. We'll never be able to demonstrate the capacity that we have and be fully integrated, as fully participating members of society. So I recognize that the virtual is a tool, like many other things, but we have to continue to recognize that we have to continue to use all of these tools in the most effective fashion, again, to create opportunities for blind people to live the lives we want.
I just love what you say, because honestly, I mean, I think and your point, it's important to be flexible, right? Sometimes, and Lord knows this is true in the blindness system, we all have our individual, hey, this is, I think, the best way of doing it. And just that sort of being doctrinal about things. I mean, there are for sure people who, let's just pick on the O&M world for a minute. And AER runs the accreditation function and the blindness system these days. We had to modify our policies about supervisors of those programs, their ability to observe students. What the heck do you do? There's a hard and fast requirement. You got to do that thing in person. What are we going to do? So it's building in that flexibility from a policy standpoint. What are we going to do? And just footnote, so that policy that change that we've made to allow that sort of virtual, well, I'll call it mentoring. It is supervision for sure, but it's expiring this coming month, and of course we're thinking about, so I mean, COVID's still here. What are we going to do? But it's that business of not just saying, gee, we're going to take this approach or that approach, but ensuring at a policy level that there is flexibility. And the wrap up comment I'll make here is, I think that's true for sure with a mentoring relationship that you have, mentor to mentee, if you want to call it that for sure, there's no one size fits all thing. There are different templates as we've talked about, but the two people involved in that relationship also need to have be very, very pragmatic and to emphasize that sort of pragmatic, and a good mentor will do that for you. That it be contextual about what they do. Anyway, sorry, that sounds like Sylvia, you were trying to get in.
Sylvia, I'm going to give you the last comment.
Okay, so I did want to say that we do have to be careful that this whole virtual world doesn't create an isolation bubble for people, because it is a safe space where you don't have to figure out how to navigate. And so something that Dan said, I think, is so important, and Anil also, is that, we've allowed, our people have really put themselves out there to develop these skills and become mentors. I told you not to bring up the arts and crafts group, Dan. I mean, that's one of the stress for me. I want to attend. But now we have these people who've stepped up to that next level. And I am so hopeful that now all of those people who've stepped up and who've started to engage across all of our organizations, who found a place, who found a voice, and who found mentors who's helped them found those, will now, just like Anil said, step out into the quote real world and utilize those same skills and continue to build those skills, and not let this become an isolation bubble.
Very well said. I want to thank my panelists, and particularly thank the organizations that you represent, ACB, AER, AFB, NFB. Been proud to be associated and involved with all of these organizations. There's so much good information, so much good activity happening. I encourage anyone listening, I hope all of you are quite familiar with these organizations, but if you're not, please look up the web, do the connections, start going to conferences when we have them again, and connect with these organizations. There's such wonderful work happening. Richard or Olaya, I'll ask you to come in if there's any sort of closing comments you want to make for today's summit. And again, thank you to this panel and the previous panel for being part of this.
Thank you, Paul, and good afternoon, everybody. This is Richard. I'll be brief. Great, Anil, Dan, Cheryl, Mark, Sylvia, and Paul. Excellent feedback, excellent information. We'll definitely continue to collaborate with you in the mentor space with Career Connect and the Connect Center. I just want to remind folks that we have a second workshop, because we love to do things in twos this afternoon. Benefits to Work workshop with Karen Schroeder on Social Security. You can go to APH ConnectCenter and /webinars and register for that. That'll begin at 7 Eastern tonight. So grab a hot cup of cocoa and join us. Good information for your transition age youth. I want to thank everyone for logging on today and participating, and I will hand it off to Olaya for the closing code and all that good stuff. So thank you, everyone, once again. This webinar will be posted up shortly in the next couple of days, and you can on our archives, so you can certainly view that and share that with your audiences. Thank you, everyone. Great topic, and I can't underscore how valuable it is for the Connect Center to be hosting this.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone, for all of the awesome information. Every time I'm on one of these webinars, I learn so much. It just goes to show you, it doesn't matter how long you've been around, there's always an opportunity to learn more. So yes, thank you so much for everybody attending. Thank you to our panelists. We look forward to keep continuing working with you and being able to pick your brains on this important topic. So thank you very much.